Well, thank you all for coming. We will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Our first order of business will be the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Providing the invocation this evening will be Pastor David Graham with the Grace Community Church. Please rise.
Shall we pray? Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for your care and love for each of us. We pray for your guidance, protection, favor, and blessing on Boulder City, on its leadership, all of its residents. Because of your amazing grace, we thank you for the privilege we have of being here. Thank you for the good weather we've having lately and for the full moon tonight. And thank you, Lord, for our dear friend who has passed, Warren Harhay. We ask, Lord, that you would be with Marcia and his family in a special way. And I pray all these things in the strong and powerful name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Let us pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In addition to the invocation, I would like to take just a moment of silence to think of Councilman Harhay. And following that, we will have some words from our city manager. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Mr. Noyola?
Honorable Mayor, Council, and community of Boulder City, saying goodbye to a great man and even a better friend is perhaps one of the toughest things that I will have to do at this podium. Councilmember Harhay was perhaps the most thoughtful, intelligent, and dignified man I've ever known. He had a way of discussing the most complex ideas and issues that didn't seem to intimidate you or make you feel a lesser person. During his tenure, he saw changes in City Hall over those 2 years and appreciated all for their dedication to transparency and making Boulder City the best it can be. He was delicate in balancing the needs of the community as a whole and recognized that council is one voice, one body. That may have made him unpopular sometimes, but it spoke resoundingly of his commitment to the process and procedure. He would often meet with city leadership to discuss ideas and respected all for their efforts and dedication. His romance with his beautiful wife, Marcia, was deep and everlasting. He loved his sons, Matthew, Marshall, and Mitchell, and adored his grandchildren, Allison, Addie, Lily, and Brad. He was a man who truly believed in family first. I think I will always remember Warren for that twinkle in his eye and his way of listening to you, not just with his head, but also with his heart. In the last months, as I had a chance to sit with Warren on many occasions in the hospital, I got to know a different side of him. In his final days, he shared with me his concern that he was not meeting expectations to his community, to his family, and his friends. But I would say, not only did he exceed any expectations we had of him. But now he walks amongst the giants, and we are all better for having his leadership, thoughtfulness, and smile. I believe I speak on behalf of all staff, council, and the community when I say that Councilman Jorge will be missed deeply.
Thank you, Mr. Noyola. And as many of you may have noticed, we are wearing bow ties, which was Mr. Jorge's typical attire at these meetings. His presence will be missed, that is for certain. And again, thank you for those words. We will move now then to our first public comment period. Items on the agenda may be taken out of order. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action, and each person has up to 5 minutes to speak on a specific agenda item. Mr. Fan?
My name is Glenn Fan. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. I too will miss Mr. Jorge. Is a wonderful person. But I want to speak about, I don't know if you guys are going to do any appointments or do a vote. I know you're going to be discussing it tonight. I have a simple solution for you. Just a few months ago, Warren and was also included on the board. You guys came to, when it came to appointment to fill in, the mayor's, the new mayor's, his council spot, it came down to luck of the draw. 2 pieces of paper in a cup. If the other piece of paper would have been drawn, you would have had that one of the people that wants to be on council would be already sitting there. I think it'd be just a real simple thing, saves a lot of argument, hassle. The second name that was in that cup, appoint that person. At that time, pretty much the whole council was, this is how we'd fill that seat. That person's still available, this person still wants it. I don't see where anything has changed. I think it just pull the other piece of paper out of the cup and appoint that person if you go that route, if you do not do an election. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Todd?
Good evening, council and city staff. My name is Greg Todd. I'm a Boulder City resident. I just want to give a great big thank you for item 7 on the agenda, on the regular agenda. It has to do with the dry lake. We finally got it listed as an open space for a park. I want to thank everybody's effort for doing that, and there's a lot of fly guys down there that are really appreciative of it. I thank you very much. And Warren was instrumental in getting this done. So he was out there setting the barrels up and everything else. So hats off to Warren. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lazar?
Good evening, City Council members and residents of Boulder City. I'm Sharon Lazar, and I'm a 24-year member of this community. I would like to speak in a different perspective on the appointment of a member to the vacated seat of our beloved Warren Hardy. The bylaws of corporate America have a very fine procedure for filling a vacated seat. That procedure is publicly posting the open seat, vetting the resumes that are submitted, and then selecting candidates from that procedure to either be interviewed or to be voted upon. And they are voted upon by the sitting board, and the one who receives the most votes is invited to fill that seat. If we look closer to home, North Las Vegas also has the same in-house procedure. So does the city of Las Vegas, and so does our sister city of Henderson. It's all done in-house, and it's working in 4 different important communities and corporate America. So I don't see any reason why we have to go to the extent of a public election when a system exists and we can look no farther than our neighbors to see how well it is working. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Barnett?
Hello, Council. My name is Linda Barnett. Thank you, Mr. Noyola, for your beautiful words, heartfelt. I'd like to speak on agenda item number 13, regarding the selection process for filling Councilman Harhey's seat. Firstly, like Mr. Noyola and everyone else, my deepest condolences to Councilman Harhey's family and to those who love him dearly. We all have our very special memories of the councilman. Regarding agenda item 13, I'd like to add my voice to the majority of voters in Boulder City who hope that we will not be put through the frustration, expense, time, and hassle of going through an election to fill this open seat, which has less than half the term left. As we know, the people of Boulder City elected you to be on council to represent them. This includes your best judgment regarding filling this seat and appointing who you would consider most in line with the platform and goals that we, the majority of the people, elected you to accomplish. We ask that the vote tonight for the seat be to appoint and that we not be subjected to another election. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a hand up over here. Mr. Schuman.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Mr. Noyola. Wonderful message that you started us off with tonight. Really appreciate that. Would have wore a bow tie, but I don't own one, so couldn't get it together quick enough.
I had to purchase mine.
Yeah, I guess I could have done that. It was a privilege to serve on the same council as Mr. Harhey. I feel very lucky to have that time with him. You know, it's the time in between the meetings and the time, you know, at Starbucks and different moments where we got to interact at different events where you really got to see who he was and what he was all about. He was really a good man and a great public servant, surely missed. I was very sad to hear of his passing. So my condolences to his family and many, many friends in Boulder City. This issue tonight with filling that seat is an interesting one. I look forward to see how you guys go on that. But I do want to officially put my name back in the hat. I was here a few months ago applying for a different open seat. Recently ran an election or was in a campaign, had many people vote for me. Many people have told me in the last couple days that I should seek the appointment and or seek the open seat, however that should happen. I do think I would offer some level-headedness and balance to the current council. So I'd hope that you would consider me for that esteemed seat. Even though it's a hard seat to fill over there, I would do my best to do that. And that's all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Martin?
Yeah, Rob Martin, Boulder City. I'm also talking about 13. I do think that you guys appointing somebody is the appropriate way to go. I think that's what Warren wanted too. I actually went and saw him really once or twice every week the whole time. Okay, he's been in the hospital, which is about 4 or 5 months now. And we became fairly close. And he was a great man. And I agree with Al completely on that. Yeah, I really enjoyed the guy. I didn't even know it one time in his early life he was a professional gambler, and that's how he started coming to Boulder City and Vegas in the first place, because he was really good at math. But anyway, obviously he did lots of other things. A wonderful guy. I just kind of wanted to say that, it's important to take what he brought to the council into how you appoint the last person. And certainly it should be an appointment. But one of the things Warren brought was a different kind of voice. And I think a different kind of voice is the right way to go in this situation. You always want different perspectives, different viewpoints, and that is certainly one of the things that he did very well. And he had a good intellect. He was an electrical engineer by training, and he actually invented a bunch of things, and even the first electric car. But, for all kinds of different reasons, I think that would be the important way to go. And that's up to the four of you to decide. And by the way, I don't want it, so that's not what this is about. So just, keep all of that in mind. And I'm really here just to honor him. And I did tie a bow tie and saw his wife the other day, but it turns out I'm really bad at tying a bow tie. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McNay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. I am Dr. Valerie McNay, a PhD, piled higher and deeper. But anyway, I'm agreeing with most of the citizens here tonight about item 13, about that. I really would hope that you appoint and not spend the money in an election. But what I really wanted to talk about, I think it's number 9 on the agenda, when you're talking about, let's see if I got the right paperwork here. Talk on the tentative capital improvement plan, and I've been going to quite a few of those meetings. And it's come to my attention that I didn't hear anything about the animal shelter in there in terms of the capital improvement plan. And it's been brought to my attention that that there are monies needed. It's 11 years old now. It's had little city maintenance. And I think it needs capital improvement monies allocated for replacement of worn out kennels, for a security system, which is completely lacking. That there's no isolated number of hours the animals left alone, and a monitoring system is essential to prevent harm to the staff and to the animals there. And I think also, I don't know, I guess it's really funding in the federal, for the operating budget isn't later, but again, low funding given to the animal shelter is a real concern about me, and I hope you will look into that more. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. All the way in the back? No, that's fine, ma'am. Come up, please.
Joan Paolini, Boulder City resident. Back to item 13. As I thought about what I wanted to say here tonight, I needed to make sure I didn't offend anyone. I didn't say anything that would get me in trouble, and to make sure everything I said was politically correct. So I wrote it down. As a citizen of Boulder City who votes, I would expect to have the right to vote for the next city council member. In my opinion, an election is needed. It would be better for this city so that the citizens would have their voice heard on who the next council member would be. Thank you.
Thank you. All the way in the back, Adele.
I'm Adele Sherwood, resident of Boulder City. I am against having an election. We are all tired of elections. We voted for you to make choices for Boulder City, and that is what you should do. You all ran on transparency, and that is what we want. It was no fun sitting in front of the credit union in the heat and wind conditions for days on end, which is what I did when I was campaigning for 3 of the current council members. It was said that the cost of an election would be $30,000 to $70,000 or more. Why would we want to spend that kind of money to elect one person to the council for such a short period of time when the alternative is to appoint? Staff has a life also, and I'm sure they do not want to spend their holiday time preparing for an election that is not necessary when it is such a busy time of the year. Thank you. I have confidence that you will not vote to have an election.
Thank you. There was someone on this side? All the way in the back?
Hi, Sharon Newby, about a 7-year resident of Boulder City. And I want to talk about number 13 also, but I see Sandra here, so I have to put a plug in for wherever and all that, graphs and charts and tabs and files it is for the dog park for my Ruby the super dog. She loves that dog park. And, but getting back to Warren, he has a special place in my heart. I had only known him for about 3 years. And when he walked into a meeting I was at and he brought his dots, which was a reference you had to be there to a previous thing we had, and said he was a person who was old but still had a lot of spark in him. I thought immediately, oh, this guy is something else. Unfortunately, that spark is gone. I appreciated his intelligence and his integrity. I decided to help him walk, and I walked help him run for city council. And I walked door to door and sat out at the beloved credit union to tell people about him. And when he was sick, we were still there handing out information for him and about him. Warren was very unique. He didn't take any contributions, said the only person that contributed to his campaign was his wife. He signed all of his signs that we passed out and wanted them back when it was over. He collected them back. When he ran for mayor, his health was deteriorating, and although he made a valiant effort to be present, I noticed one day, he noticed we were all sitting out there with our little tables and our buttons and our signs and t-shirts. He looked around, and the next time we were there, he had a bunch of white t-shirts to hand out instead of the colored ones with everybody's names on them. I really miss him and will miss him. The last thing we were going to talk about at the Starbucks, was tiny houses. So he was very conservative. And we don't know what Warren would want. Who knows? I don't know. But I just hope that we won't spend any extra money than we have to. And we'll find someone. I know the council is perfectly capable of finding a good person. We've already had several people say they're interested in. We've got lots of candidates for you to look at. And I've heard there's also some kind of other way they've done this in other towns around us. So I hope you will look at the candidates that are interested and decide who might be the best to round out our council and appoint someone. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, in the back.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Listofka, Boulder City resident. I'm an engineer and a speaker, so I'll see if I can get through this okay. Regarding agenda item 7, designating part of the dry lake west of Highway 95, it looks to me like we're only talking about preserving the northern 2/3, looking at the map, and I'm wondering about the southern 1/3, which is also a valued and irreplaceable recreational area. So I hope there's not plans to develop that or do something there. I think it should be left as it is for the further enjoyment of residents and guests. And regarding agenda item 13, which everybody's talking about, I also agree that we just went through an election and, we don't need to do that again. We chose you people because we wanted a new direction and a new agenda, and I think that you could responsibly pick a new person to continue that, so we don't have to go through all of that expense again. Second, I heard that suggested that we should consider a person with municipal utilities related experience for that position, which I think is a great idea. There are a lot of city residents that don't get involved in politics and government, some like me who are getting a little bit involved, and there are others who are very actively involved, and I think some of these people have just the experience that we could use. I'm helping one group look into what's going on with the history and current activities of the city's utilities. We're asking for reports and answers and having a hard time getting them. When we get information, we think a lot of it doesn't make sense or add up, so we ask again, we get more information, it's different, it still doesn't seem to add up, so we're still working on the problem, and we're not going to give up or go away. It's the right of the citizens to know where their money's going. It only takes a little thought to realize how valuable it would be to have a person with relevant experience on the council. Many of us who are actively involved in working on this would be very disappointed if this valuable, important opportunity is wasted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, there?
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and city officials and public. I would like to express my...
If you would state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
you.
Sandra Frazier, president of Sea Spot Run. I would like to express my appreciation for considering the dog park needs in your budget. However, the board members were unaware of any of the details that were outlined in the Boulder City Review article this past Thursday. We are all for the grass, but feel there are additional costs and needs associated with grass that's needed to be considered. We find it unusual that no one from our organization has been involved in the discussion, as it appears from the article that much thought has been put into the current proposal that is, according to the article, will be presented tonight. The most pressing concerns would be water for the grass, maintenance for the grass, water lines and irrigation maintenance, park insurance, board member liability, just to name a few things. The current cost to maintain and operate the dog park is $12,000 a month. This includes park insurance, liability insurance, water, park supplies, trash bags, waste bags, hoses, and bowls, park maintenance, storage, administrative expenses, emergency phone, accounting, software, website, computer supplies, and garbage removal. An expansion park with grass will easily increase our expenditures by 4 to 5-fold, with no immediate ability to support these expenditures. We are also concerned that for the last 8 years, we have attempted to educate the public as well as the dog owners that this facility is a nonprofit. We have worked hard for our fundraising events to maintain and improve the park. People have been generous and helpful, but will this end because they consider it now a Boulder City Park? For our record, my only unofficial conversations were at the bake sale last month with the mayor and a confirmation that I was willing to discuss grass possibilities with Mr. Keenan Cottrell, but I have not been consulted at this point. Also last Thursday, 1/11, I was at the Park and Recreation Department to turn in proof of insurance, and Roger Hall spoke to me a few minutes about the proposal that he was working on for a meeting at 4 o'clock that day. He told me not to get my hopes up. I've simply added this as an example of the lack of information our organization has been concerned with on this project. I simply want to explain our somewhat surprised reaction. We are all interested in improvements, but would like to be included. I would suggest a meeting with representatives from the city, Park and Recs, and the dog park to schedule, and that we could plan a path forward to benefit all parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DeShane?
Sorry, 12,000. 1,200. I'm sorry, 1,200.
Well, we'll let the record reflect it's $1,200 a month, not
All right. Judy DeShane, I would like to ask the council to please consider tabling item 6 and item 9. Both of them have to do with money, and I feel there are too many citizens that have a number of questions about both items, and I'd ask that you table it till January, because I know that you only have the one meeting this month, one meeting in December, and it really doesn't give, with the holidays, it's hard for staff to get the information that you would need to make a decent decision. We have the principal on the bonds is $23,586, but we're borrowing 26 million instead of 23 or 24 million. As I understand it, that's what we asked for, and we cannot change that we are tied in. We have to borrow that amount of money from what I observed when you had the last meeting and it was discussed. I think it was the October 29th when I watched the video. And that just, there's been no explanation as to what the extra is. My concern is I'm sure a portion of it, $500,000 or maybe more, is going to Zion as being a broker. I am assuming the rest is prepaid interest or points, which is prepaid interest, in which case we aren't really saving as much money as what is being said, because we're just paying it in advance, and I don't think that's right. We have about approximately 20,000 roughly in a brokerage or investment account at Wells Fargo. I think it should be considered to use that plus the 750,000 that was supposed to get paid towards the thing from 2016 ballot measure that hasn't been. That's another 2.2 or something like that million, and that means we're just 2 million short. And there was, the end of September, there was like 68 million in the checking account. So I think we could borrow a couple million and pay that back and put the money back as years go on and save, actually wind up saving $5 or $6 million as opposed to going with this. The other thing, item 9, at the last Capitol meeting, Fred Volz had listed a whole number of accounts that didn't seem to jive, things that didn't seem to be verified as to why we needed to spend that money. And I think that should be looked at closer. That was October 29th, and since that point, I don't believe there's been another meeting. So that is, those things are still open and not accounted for and not accounted for properly. And I think staff needs time to be able to resolve those issues that are out there. So that's why I would ask that you please table this until a January meeting. I don't want it voted down because we do need it, but we don't need to do it today. The budget and that, if it gets done in January, gets approved in January, that won't matter any. The same with the bond thing. If it doesn't get approved until January, what are we out? Nothing. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Council members and mayor, my name is Darlene Medina, and I'm a 20-year resident. And I'd like to speak about item number 13. But before I do that, I'd like to say that on the dog park issue, they really need your support. Sandy has worked hard for our dog park to keep it running, holding all kinds of fundraisers. She's down there every day. She keeps in touch with everybody for donations, and we really need some help down there. On 13, I heard Rich Schumann come up and offer to be on the council. I think he would make a great council addition. He has experience following and respect and did a good job on his previous job as a council member. He would be a good balance for the council. So I just feel that he should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Sinayakan?
My name is Neil Sinaikin. I'm really glad about the dog park. I would like Margaret Kolar to receive some kind of accommodation or award. She was the one that was totally instrumental in starting the dog park. I came tonight on item 13, and I have submitted my application to run. And it doesn't matter how you do it, but if you appoint, I'd like to see each of you meet with each candidate that applies so that you're not relying on any special interest group or on any one person, that there's a fair, even approach to it. For 35 years, I've lived here and I haven't run. This is my first interest in it. I came here in '84 during the 100-year flood. I was brought here to build the Smith Center over on Utah. My background is in construction and in real estate finance and contracts, and they asked me to come here and handle that along with a man named Don Western. And I planned to stay for a year, and I found that I loved being in Boulder City. I was from Los Angeles. I had a very nice home. I had a very successful consulting and investment practice on Wilshire Boulevard, and I had a house in the hills, and I had a weekend home on 5 acres in Ojai. But I was miserable, and I was very happy here, and I moved here. In coming here, I became involved. I was the chairman of the Citizen Development Allotment Committee. I was chairman of the Planning Commission. I was on the Charter Commission. I was on one of the primary historic preservation committees. I was the Southern Nevada representative to the Strategic Planning Authority appointed by or recommended by Bob Ferraro. I have a background in real estate, finance, zoning, all of the things of Title 11. I have knowledge of the open meeting law, which has proved very helpful. I have a very wide array of experience, and I hope that whatever you do, the person selected is the most qualified, not represented by any special interest group or by a popularity vote. I have recently helped out on the hangar per Mr. McManus's request. I've commented on Mr. Morris's braze regarding the open meeting law violation. I found that horrendous. I've commented on the Track 350, and I think I was instrumental in your pooling the RFP because you didn't get an appraisal and it wasn't complete. I'm able to lend a lot of things, and it's very important to me that the four of you or whoever succeed and that you aren't attacked. There's division, there's divisiveness. Claudia and James were attacked by the BCCA over one vote, and I find that to be outrageous. I don't know who wrote that. You're being, to me, attacked by the press. Fritz McDonald comes to mind. Mr. Morris comes to mind. Other things come to mind. And a lot of people have a lot of work in getting this new council in place. I was going to retire from this. I told Mr. McManus that I'm out, but I'm not able to do that. I don't want to see what everybody has worked for come apart by division and by lack of experience and by mistakes and attacks by the newspaper from Celia and Hallie for no reason. I feel that you might be a small chance of being recalled or a case is being built. I feel the most qualified from the people I've seen so far, including Mr. Schuman. There are people that already believe they've been ordained by the Boulder City Community Alliance that they're going to fill the seat. And I find that to be, disturbing, but I know it's untrue. I know that each of you are or have been with the Boulder City Community Alliance. Tracy's the founder. Claudia said that she was asked by the BCCA. The mayor was sponsored by the BCCA, and I believe you either are or were a director of the BCCA. I'm not sure if you're still director, but I think there's a need for diversity. I have the qualifications, I have the heart, I have 35 years of experience. What was disturbing, I received an email from a member of the BCCA of high rank. The email said that I'm the most qualified person, but there's a person that's already been anointed for that seat, and I won't mention who that is. They said that even though I'm the most qualified, they would appreciate that I stayed on the sidelines and in essence mind my own business. I can provide you with that email. I found it very, not upsetting, but I didn't care for it. I plan to go forward. I hope to assist you. I don't want to see you attacked. I hope there's diversity beyond the BCCA, although I respect the BCCA. And I'm in whether you appoint or whether there's a vote. Either way, I'm not able to just sit back and watch what I see occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Last chance. All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment then. And we'll now move to the approval of the regular agenda. Any changes, Madam City Clerk? Mr. City Manager?
No changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No changes.
Okay, Council, any changes?
I had one question. We had the approval of the October 29th special meeting, and I didn't see those in the packet. Are those being removed from this?
Yes, but that's on the consent, the next item.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm jumping ahead.
I had a question too. So we're leaving on the agenda the item having to do with the Virgin River, with respect.
BLM gas and oil sales?
Yeah, with respect to the article this morning in the paper. So, okay, so we're going to keep that on. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Entertain a motion for approval then, as published.
So moved for approval. A motion to move for approval.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous on approval. Move to the approval of the consent agenda. Any changes, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. Staff is recommending we remove item 1B, and those will be brought back at the next meeting.
And those being the minutes?
Of the capital improvement special meeting that occurred on October 29th.
Okay. Mr. City Manager?
No further changes.
Mr. City Attorney?
No further changes.
All right. Bring it to council then for any changes.
No changes.
Okay. I'm requesting items numbers 3 and 4 be moved to the regular agenda. Any other changes?
No.
Okay. Ask then for a motion to approve as amended.
I move to approve with the changes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. We'll then move to item number 3 then as our first agenda item.
Your Honor, Dennis Porter, Utilities Director. Item number 3 is for the approval of a professional services agreement for Brana Caldwell to prepare the water and wastewater system condition assessment and 10 years capital improvement plan. That contract is about $400,000. It includes project management, project planning, doing the assessment of.
That's item 4.
Oh, was it 4? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Whoops. Which one's 3?
That's okay. You have 3 as well. 3 is the repeal of the automatic increases on the utility rates.
Oh, well, okay.
Now that we've been reminded.
Why don't we start with number 3?
Sure.
So 3 is the formal action to repeal the 2.5% that were discussed and motion was made on at the previous council meeting. This basically formalizes through the resolutions and will make the decision permanent.
Okay, and these rate increases you just mentioned were at 2.5% per year. That was not only on the product, kilowatts of energy, water, but also on the connection fees. It covered everything that was related to utility charge would have increased by 2.5%.
That is correct.
Okay. Since this was the item I had requested at the last regular meeting to be considered, when I look at the charges we have, for instance, our Hoover power contract, there is no escalator built into that at 2.5%. I believe the SNWA may have a 1.5% charge on theirs, but not the 2.5%. And of course, the sewer and landfill, those also don't have automatic increases in them. Looking at what those increases would have brought over time seemed to far outstrip what the changes were. My understanding is the Silver State Co-op that we purchase our other power from was also predicting they would not see rate increases over the next several years. So again, I don't feel we should be charging our residents when we can't say that we see these automatic increases coming down the line. But I'll open it up to anyone else on council if you have comments or questions. Councilman Adams?
I think that this is the right move, especially considering that we're in the process of beginning a new rate study. Down the line, we're going to have to be addressing these rates. And I mean, it's just one thing to, be increasing these right at the very tail end. And, I didn't agree with how the rates were increased last time. And so I think that repealing this kind of, generic 2.5% all across the board, I think this is the right move for the community.
Anyone else?
I have some comment. When I was studying these in the agenda packet, and correct me if I'm wrong because I couldn't look into the old resolutions. There's a system issue tonight. So with regards to the electric fund, resolution 7030, just because of the language that's used, that because what's laid out on the schedule goes through 2020 on that particular item, where the other ones for the water and sewer just are spelled out through 2019. When we say that as stipulated herein, that gives a slight increase in 2020 in July for the electric. But when you look down at what those changes are, they're minuscule, like not tenths of pennies. But I think that needs to be addressed before the July 2020. And I think our rate study will be done before then, but I think that's something to consider.
And I agree. My intent was that those increases would go away forever and ever unless we had some future action. And again, that future action would be based on the rate study. Again, my opinion is, looking at the finances within the utilities, is the rate increases that were voted in 2016 overshot the mark. And we need to have that rate study to take a look at that. But I agree with Councilwoman Folda that my intent with this was we weren't going to see automatic increases of any type unless we voted at a later date to put those in. I guess we can address that prior to next July if necessary. The language in there is there for taking those out at this time. Okay. Councilwoman Bridges?
I just wanted to confirm that I was reading this correctly. Yeah, I noticed for the electric that it goes through 2020. That's already now, right? When it says 2020, that's fiscal year 1920, correct?
That is correct.
These current rates, okay. And then the other one only went through 2019 because...
I don't know.
I
don't know what the reasoning was at the time. I don't know if anybody here remembers, but they did go through 19 on the water and sewer. They went through 20 on the electric.
Okay. But that was already in effect. That is not.
That was when they were done in 2016.
Councilman Adams?
Just to clarify, with any rates that were to automatically come up, with that rate study coming up, anything that we decided during that rate study would take precedent, correct? We would essentially scrap whatever was left. We wouldn't have to deal with this on top of the rate study, correct?
That's correct. In the future, once the council entertains whatever the outcome is of the rate study, that will then supersede any other rates structures that you may have in place, and the new rate study would then take effect.
Okay. Normally, I don't like approving these with one motion, but since these are all very similar, unless someone has an objection, then I would ask for a motion to approve Resolution 7030, 7031, and 7032.
I move to pass resolution number 7030, 7031, and 7032.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, we'll now move to item number 4.
Okay. Let me try this again. Item 4 is in front of you tonight is for a professional services agreement for Brown and Caldwell. It's to provide the engineering services for the condition assessment work on the water and wastewater system. The contract value is $400,000. It's essentially about half and half for water and sewer. And to put that in perspective, that's about 5% of the water and sewer budget. And to put it in even a kind of a bigger perspective, the replacement value of those two utility systems are probably around, back a napkin, $250 million. And so it's less than, 0.2% to do this effort that is necessary for us to develop a good 10-year capital plan that we can then put into the rate model and understand better what we need to do with the rates moving forward.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Okay, my reason for asking this to be heard is with regard to the way that the responses from the other firms were handled. There's a process that you go through where you score the different proposals that are returned, and this company received the most points. Is that correct for the proposal?
That is correct, and that information is included in the package.
Okay. The question comes up is, well, who was the low bidder? And you explained that to me this afternoon. If you could give an overview of that.
Absolutely. So NRS 625.530 is basically the chapter that addresses professional engineering and land surveyors. There are restrictions that are included in that NRS provision. In that, it says the selection of professional engineer, professional land surveyor, or registered architect to perform services pursuant to subsection 1 be made on the basis of competence and qualifications of the engineer, land surveyor, or architect for the type of agreement upon a fair and reasonable service to be performed, and not on the basis of competitive fees. This NRS language has been in the NRS Nevada statute for many, many, many years, and not only Boulder City, but everybody in the state, when they do professional engineering services selections, it's always qualification-based.
Okay, and in this case, the RFP that went out and the proposal that was returned actually did not meet all of the requests that were within the proposal. Is that correct?
So if I understood your
the RFP spelled out a certain number or certain services.
So we did request in the original RFP an asset management plan as well as a sewer model. As we were negotiating the scope with the selected consultant, those costs exceeded our budget, so that's something we'll be looking at towards the future.
Okay. Did the other firms similarly do that, or we just never got to that point with them because the other firm had...
So they all had their qualifications included to do that type of work. It wasn't until we started the negotiation process that we knew we were going to be exceeding the budget.
Okay. And again, I appreciate that explanation. I think state law might be a little odd that you have to pick somebody and then you negotiate the price rather than saying, tell us what your price is for this, but it is state law. So any other questions or comments? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion for approval of Resolution 7033.
I move to approve resolution number 7033.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. We'll move to item number 5. Introduction of bill number 1865.
I'll introduce to I'll move to introduce bill number 1865. Read the title, waive the reading.
Bill number 1865, an ordinance of the City of Boulder City approving agreement number 19-1861, a development agreement as permitted under NRS 278.0201 through 278.02073 between the City of Boulder City and Copper Mountain Solar 5 LLC for the development of the Copper Mountain Solar 5 utility scale solar facility. Bill number 1865 will be considered at the December 10th, 2019 regular City Council meeting.
Thank you. We'll move then to item number 6, the bond refinancing, or should I say debt refinancing?
Good evening, Diane Pellish, Boulder City Finance Director. Tonight we ask your consideration of Bill number 1864, which is an ordinance to allow Boulder City to refinance its existing utility bond refunding debt. I have 2 guests here this evening. Mr. Andrew Artusa with Zions Bank is also Boulder City Financial Advisor. He has a brief presentation to give. And I also have a representative from Bond Counsel, which is Kendra Follett from Sherman and Howard. She's in attendance if there are any legal questions. So without further ado, I'll let Andrew do his presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. I have a brief presentation that I put together regarding this item. The first page, do I have a clicker? Oh, I do. Okay, great. On the first page of the item, I just wanted to show the summary of the bids that were received. This went out to over 30 different institutions that are interested in lending to municipal governments. You'll see that the winning bidder, the bidder that we chose was Chase Bank. It provided 2 options, one being a rate of 1.79, but it did not allow for prepayment. And then option 2 was a 2.06, which allowed for prepayment starting in June 1st of 2022. The next bid that we viewed as being number 2 was from Key Bank. Their rate was 2.37. They allowed for prepayment at any time with 30 days notice. And then the third bidder had a slightly lower rate, 2.35, but they wouldn't let you prepay until just June of 2026. We decided, in talking with staff and my recommendation, we brought forth to you the proposal from Chase, option 2 at a 2.06 because of the very low rate and the ability to prepay sooner. And I know that was an important item that the council wanted to be considered as the ability to prepay. If we look at option 2 with the 2.06, you'll see the savings here on the third slide. You'll see the new debt service compared to the old debt service. The biggest benefit here you'll see is that the debt service is now 12 and a half years rather than a full 16 years. So we did shorten the term up significantly. Because of the lower interest rate, you'll be saving a significant amount of money every single year, whereas when I came to you back in September, That savings, we thought that we would probably only save in years 33 through 36, and then have to pay a little bit more because of the shorter term. But because the rates were so low, we were able to hit the market at a very, very good time when the interest rates were at their lowest point. So that was very advantageous. So just more luck than anything on that. But that resulted in about $4.8 million in savings over the term of the original bonds. And so if you look at it on a present value basis, it's about 4.2%. And then the city is contributing some cash to that. So netting that cash out, the total PV saving is 3.58%. And the way we look at this, so we're not borrowing $26 million. That was just the not to exceed. And the reason we had that higher amount is because typically these types of revenue bonds that are not backed by the city's taxing power require a reserve fund. However, this bank, Chase Bank, did not require that any reserve be funded in connection with this, so we did not have to borrow for the reserve amount. And then the total par amount is $23,495,000 that we're borrowing, and that's only what we need to pay off the existing bonds, plus interest, plus any cost of issuance. And so right now, the existing bonds have $23.96 million outstanding with interest. The city is contributing $588,000 in towards this bond issue, and that's how we got to the $23,495. So we're actually issuing less than what's outstanding right now with interest. On the refunding savings, this is just a graph showing the refunding savings, comparing it to what it was back in 2006. The total PV savings is $4.8 million, and like I said before, it's 3.58% or 15% of refunded par. And the industry threshold, just to keep in mind, is 3% of refunded par, so we're exceeding that significantly. So a summary, the borrowing rate has reduced from an average rate of 4.3% to 2.06%. We're saving $4.8 million over the life of the bonds. That $4.8 million includes all issuance costs, so there's nothing on top of that. It's already included in the $4.8 million. They reduced the bond term from 16 years to 12.5 years. You have the ability to prepay up into, as long as it's after June 1st of 2022, which we viewed as a very short time period to develop a significant amount of money to pay this off. And it really benefited by being able to accept the lower rate. We eliminated the required debt service reserve fund, so that's no longer part of the transaction. The previous bonds had one, but it was funded with a surety policy from an insurance company. By doing it as a private placement, we saved over $1 million. Mostly of that is cost of issuance and the fact that the reserve fund was not required, but the rate would have been slightly higher. I estimate, I don't know for sure, but it would be closer to about 2.33 based on other deals that I had in the market at the time. And another benefit is that since it's a private placement and not publicly offered, the city will not have to prepare annual disclosure filings for the investors, and so that'll save about $2,500 a year in addition to, that's not included in the $4.8 million that we talked about. That's all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Councilwoman Bridges?
Oh, thank you. If you could go back a little bit.
Sure.
It seems like the common request I've been hearing is to explain why it says up to, and I know you've already said that about the reserves.
Yeah.
But to be clear that the debt is only for that 23.4, or is there going to be interest that has to be paid along with that upfront?
No. So the reason why we picked $26 million was because we had the, to meet the city's agenda item process, the timing, we had to put an amount in there. And because we didn't take bids, we didn't know if that reserve requirement was going to be required by a lending institution. Mm-hmm. We didn't know if we were doing a public placement or a private placement. And so we wanted to give that flexibility, because if we didn't, then we'd have to start from the beginning and have to do this all over again, and we would not be able to lock in the rate like we are now. And so that we're only borrowing exactly what we need to pay off the old bonds and to cover cost of issuance, which is $23.495 million.
Can that agenda item be modified so that it reflects the exact number? No? How come?
Because that's required to be posted, and you don't post an agenda after the meeting has occurred. What can be conveyed is the actual amount once it's approved.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Just to be redundant,
Oh, sure.
on the table that you have, the summary of bids received, it's page 178 of our packet. It does show a cost in fees of $10,000 for this particular loan.
Yes.
Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, sure. So Chase Bank included their counsel fees. It was an up to $10,000. So that fee is solely to pay their lawyers to review the bond documents that were prepared by your lawyers. I don't know what that bill is, but it's capped at $10,000, and that was included in the savings numbers that I gave you already.
Okay. And then on page 179 there, you've already gone over that currently the new debt service was going to be the $26,989, showing the total there.
Oh, that's right. That's the correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then after the calculated savings and the contribution of $588,000, that brings it down to this new $23,685.
No, the $26,989, the number is the debt service on this $23,495 bond. So it's a $23,495 that we're going to need to pay for the new bond plus interest. That's what that's reflecting. So that's principal and interest. The $23,685 is the amount of principal outstanding on the 2006 bond, and the interest on that is $278,000. And so that comes out to $23.963 million. The $588,000 is going to be a contribution that we make to reduce the $23,495 on the new bond to get the par amount of that reduced. So I think I'm a little confused on your question,
That's okay. I'm a little confused by the numbers.
Yeah. So this first column is the debt service on the new bond with a par amount of $23,495. And then this is the old debt service, is the debt service on the old bond, and that's at $23,685 plus interest.
Okay. So again, what I guess the bottom line, so to speak, is we are only financing the amount that these bonds are going to cost us.
Correct.
Okay. We're not financing beyond that.
That is correct. Not a penny more.
Okay. The $26 million, the up to amount was just that. That was a maximum amount, and that amount was still less than what the payoff amount on the bonds would have been at that time?
That's correct.
Okay. So we have a savings there then.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a savings on the back end of this because it's 12 years instead of 16 years.
That is correct.
Okay. And there is a little bit of savings. I think it averages, a little over $95,000 a year. And that's due to the lower interest rate.
Correct.
Okay, so have I missed anything?
You have not missed a thing.
Okay. I just want to clarify, this is new for Boulder City. The voters gave us the approval just this past June to be able to do something like this. And the worst possible thing we could do is to then say, oh, well, we're going to do something a little bit different than what we told you. I want to make sure that when these numbers are there, that this is exactly what we said we were going to do. We are just going to refinance the debt. It's not like a home equity loan where somebody says, well, I need a new car too, so I'm going to go ahead and roll another 30 grand into my house payment or something like that. We are just doing this debt. No other costs. We are contributing an additional, $588,000?
That's correct.
Okay, but that's not new money. That's money that the city currently has.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so we're not borrowing a penny more than we need. Federal tax law would not allow us to do that. Kendra Follett's here from Bond Council. She can attest to that as well. You can only finance certain costs as far as doing a bond issue. Nothing's going to change later. We have locked in this amount with Chase Bank, and they have told us that we cannot change it up until our closing date, which is December 9th. So we've locked in the amount, and it's only covering what we have to pay in principal and interest plus costs to get this refinancing done. And you all should be very, very happy about these results. I mean, these are tremendous savings. It was a very successful, you got 5 bids you're an issuer that's not frequently in the market, and you were not required to fund a debt service reserve fund, and you were able to shorten the term. So I was really happy about the results, and I think you all should be very, very proud and happy about the savings you contributed to the city by doing this.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I say something to Councilwoman Bridges' concerns about the amount on the agenda title? If you look at the ordinance itself that's been included in the packet materials, there's several items that will need to be completed at when and if this is approved. And the ordinance itself will have all those details with the amount and the percentage and all of that filled in. And so when you go back to the records, that's what you'll see.
Okay. So again, if anybody's been through a house closing, until you actually get there that day to put your name on the dotted line, the numbers could change a little bit between now and then, or?
They won't change.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, things can come in lower than anticipated, and then if there's extra money from that, we would use that to pay the debt service on the bond issue in the first payment, but there shouldn't be. I've pretty much nailed everything down.
All right. And then, again, just one other clarification. This was the lowest interest rate. We had 5 responses, and this was the lowest rate. There was another rate that was possibly lower, but that would not have allowed us to do the early payments or prepayments.
That's correct.
Okay. So where's the downside on the deal here, Andy?
I don't see any downside. I think you guys should be very, very happy and proud.
Okay. And thank you for your work on this, too.
Thank you. It was
well.
a pleasure. I'm so glad it all worked out in this way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think that covered everything for me.
Okay.
Me too.
Mrs. Pelletier, any additional information?
I think Andy said it all. I mean, it's a great deal, and I think Boulder City residents are going to be very happy with the results.
All right. Thank you. Well, if there are no other questions then, entertain a motion to approve bill number 1864.
I move to approve bill number 1864.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous then. Move to item number 7, Mr. Mays.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am Michael Mays, your Community Development Director. Goal C, Strategy 11 of the Boulder City 2025 Strategic Plan was to identify an area of the El Dorado Valley dry lake bed for preservation. Staff, in response to this goal, has identified 1,429 acres, generally located west of U.S. Highway 95, and we have a graphic here, an exhibit on the screen, that shows the identified area for preservation. You'll also see on the screen that besides the area in question, you have Highway 95 to the east. You have area that's noted in yellow to the north and to the west and to the south. Those areas denoted in yellow are either existing solar facilities that are developed, or leases and or options for leasing of land for future solar projects. And so with that as the guide, staff identified the remaining dry lake bed area for preservation. Resolution number 7034 would designate it as the dry lake bed recreation area, fulfilling this strategic plan goal. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Questions from council? Councilman Adams?
Yeah, just to discuss kind of that lower third of the dry lake bed that was mentioned in public comments. Those are currently under option, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then regarding the use, what type of use would be prohibited? Obviously, there is, the solar companies are right there. Is there any type of use that we're seeing that we will no longer permit there that has been permitted there before, or is this basically locking in what people have been enjoying about the dry lake bed?
This would be locking in what people have already been utilizing the dry lake bed for. It's governed by Title VII, Chapter 5 of the City Code that talks about how the dry lake bed and other recreational areas can be utilized. Typically, the most frequent uses of the dry lake bed do include recreational ATVs. It includes RC, model aircraft flights, wedding events with a special events permit, as well as others obtaining permits for photo shoots on the dry lake bed.
Any other questions? So if we get complaints that the panels are getting dusty, we say you built your panels in the desert and the off-road people are still able to go out there and do their thing?
That's been how it's been utilized already. Certainly commercial use of the dry lake bed for ATV use has been restricted because of the intense level of vehicle usage that may negatively impact the solar fields, but not recreational use.
Okay. Any other uses? It was mentioned also earlier that there are a lot of people with radio-controlled planes. Some are not radio-controlled, but they're still free to do their thing out there as well?
The RC use is allowed out there as a recreational use.
Okay. And as Mr. Adams had asked, the lower third there, those were options that were done. One was done, I believe, last year, and the other had been done, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, as I recall.
Yeah, I don't have the correct dates, but those are options that have been in place for a while now.
And there was another request to come a little further north with another project, as I recall. It had been initially requested. I think it was the land management process, no longer known as the land management plan. Their request had been put in for that. That request did not go forward through the land management process. Is that correct?
That is correct. In 2019, as part of the land management process review, there was an application submitted for consideration of about 667 acres for solar usage, which would have been the middle portion of what is being preserved here for recreational use.
Okay. The significance of this government park designation, let's say 20 years from now, another council wants to say, no, that's going to be energy zone. What would the process look like in order to change this zoning if we approve it tonight?
Well, and just to clarify, this resolution designates it as a recreational area. What would have to occur with any other city-owned land use designation, the first step would be requesting an amendment to the land management process list. The property in question is also zoned for open space, and the the master plan is designating it for recreational open space uses. Both the zoning ordinance and the master plan would also require amendments and the proper public hearing and notification process.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Entertain a motion then for passage of resolution number 7034.
I move to pass resolution number 7034.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Mays. And you must be here for historic preservation as well, then.
I am. Thank you, Mayor. So for agenda item 8, on September 24th, the City Council concurred with the Historic Preservation Committee on their proposed historic preservation goals for Boulder City. Since then, staff has evaluated how to successfully accomplish those goals in the most cost-effective manner. The Historic Preservation Committee on October 23rd identified several goals which they believe and recommend require third-party consultant support in order for the city to be successful in implementing those goals. In order for staff to move forward with the utilization of a third-party consultant to help with these goals, a budget amendment to fiscal year 1920 is required. Resolution number 7035 would amend the fiscal year 1920 general fund budget by $58,572, which is based on staff's estimate after consulting with a local firm that provides these types of services. Again, this would only be for the current fiscal year of 1920. There are additional goals that the Historic Preservation Committee believes require third-party support, but as part of subsequent budget proposals that would come before the City Council, staff would recommend additional funds in order to accomplish those goals within that fiscal year. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councilwoman Folda?
I guess, so when we looked at what the Historic Preservation had presented to us and what we're looking at here, it's hard to compare because the wording has been moved around a little bit. And then from the Historic Preservation, what their goals were to what is listed underneath as consultant support is slightly modified as well. The wording is the same, but some of the numbers have changed. So it's hard to compare what we've previously already approved. And I guess for going forward, you know, I support all these action items on here. I think these historic preservation items are great goals and things that need to be done with updating our codes and the action. And to do that, I guess there's just a lot of confusion of who's going to be doing what, as far as the Historic Preservation Committee, city staff, or someone that we're hiring out. And then within, you know, I asked this earlier, but I just wanted you to say within the consultant support that we have with the line items with the prices, item number 5 and 6 are both unfunded and there's no percentage given. Can you explain that?
Sure. So to kind of walk you through the two attachments that are in the packet. Attachment number 1, which is titled Historic Preservation Community Goals, are the 8 goals that were identified by the Historic Preservation Committee. This is what was taken to the committee to discuss what resources would be needed in order to successfully accomplish those goals. With that attachment 1, you will see that objectives 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are highlighted in blue. This is based on the recommendation by the committee that while the committee can provide guidance and a certain level of support to each of these, and staff can provide support, the bulk of the work in a lot of these areas would require third-party support in order for us to be successful in moving forward. You'll also see that within attachment 1, there are tentative timelines that represent each of the goals. And this ties back to the city's strategic plan, the 2025 strategic plan, that had laid out a process in order to accomplish each of these goals. You'll note that with objective number 2, develop a historic preservation plan, that is one of the first goals, and helps to provide guidance to implementation of the others. Goals 1 and 8 in that first attachment are not highlighted in blue because Goal 1, the committee is working on currently to develop a mission statement, and Goal 8 is being accomplished through our existing contract with Stantec in identifying purposes for historically significant buildings within the community, city-owned buildings. To help with the development of the budget amendment request for this evening, Attachment 2 looks at the 6, not the 8, but the 6 that were highlighted blue by the committee, and looks at the timelines relative to each of those. And again, only looking at fiscal year 1920, because that's all we're seeking money for is utilization of third party in this fiscal year. What monies would be needed for the third party support? So as you will see with the latter goals and action items, there is no money being requested because those are anticipated to be accomplished in later years. This is a 5-year plan, and again, staff would be coming back to the City Council in subsequent budget processes requesting funds to tie into the roadmap, if you will, that the Historic Preservation Committee has laid out with these goals.
Okay, so I think going forward, as we identify what part is being done, which work is being done by a consultant, that we identify that more clearly of what they're doing, and then obviously the rest of it will be brought by that consultant back to the Historic Preservation Committee for their discussion and review, and then given direction to staff.
Correct.
And then brought either back to the consultant or back to City Council. I'm not sure at what point we would see it, but maybe just for identifying exactly who's doing what, I think would be beneficial.
And I think similar to our strategic plan, as well as to the recently approved action items related to the economic development plan, this is an opportunity to report out to the community the progress that the city is making in accomplishing these goals.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple questions. Okay, you say that this, there's only several consulting firms in the area that do this type of work?
Correct.
Okay. Would there be a requirement of a contract with them, or is this a sort of a menu experience where you would say you're going to perform these and this is how much it's going to cost? So there would just be an agreement for a certain amount of work. There's not an ongoing expectation of...
There would be agreements. We would be fully complying with NRS as well as our own city purchasing policies as it relates to any contract with a third-party consultant.
Okay. And you were saying that this one in particular has worked with Las Vegas?
The one that provided us the estimates for these, correct, is with Northwind Resource Consulting, and is the former Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Las Vegas.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Adams?
And then just to clarify on that note, we're not necessarily saying that this is the consultant that we will go with. This was just to get an idea of where we're going at with it.
That is correct, yes.
And then I just wanted to kind of echo Councilwoman Folda's sentiments regarding the importance of keeping, the committee, the council involved. I think it's important for the community that they see the progress that is getting made. So I think that that's really important to keep that in mind. I want to congratulate again the Historic Preservation Committee on getting this done. It's really thorough, and I think we're going to start to see a lot of good things regarding historic preservation moving forward here. So.
I feel the same as Councilman Adams, that having been a member of the Preservation Committee, that we see some really solid things starting to move forward out of that committee. I think their recommendations were sound. They were based on the strategic plan for the most part. We had made some changes as far as removing the position of a full-time preservation officer here in Boulder City. And I believe they responded very well with going through that list and developing priorities and making those recommendations to us, as well as you and Susan Danielowitz, our city planner, going through and helping them with that process as well. One question that I have, and I feel it's probably our starting point, we have our nomination to the Federal Register, commonly known as the Janus Report, which was the initial survey of the town. That was developed by a company named Janus, therefore the name Janus Report. That was done 83, as I recall. The recommendation is that those surveys be updated every 10 years. Ours has never been updated, so it's now approaching 40 years old, I guess. How are we handling that?
Well, first off, with the fiscal year 1920 budget, $30,000 was approved to hire a third-party firm to update that survey work. We have reached out to Northwind Research Consulting. They have provided staff a proposal for how to accomplish that. That has been included in an application that's been sent to the State Historic Preservation Office. Now that the community is certified local government, we have the opportunity to take advantage of grant funds each year to help reimburse for expenses, just like with that survey update. So we hope to hear from SHPO regarding our grant application later this month, no later than December, but the objective is to accomplish that survey update before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so we have allocated already the amount of money sufficient to do that resurvey, and we've applied for a grant that may reimburse us for some of that amount. I believe the figure was 60% of that amount.
That's correct. 60% reimbursed, we would contribute 40%.
Okay. Again, I think that it's already been stated here that as we do look at these goals, the recommendations that came from the Preservation Committee, they had assigned dates and timelines to that as well, and that we try and give precedence to that. And if it's not working out for some reason, that we say why that's not working out and ask the committee to take another look at it. And if they need to come back with additional recommendations, I certainly encourage them to do that. But I think that might be the way to handle things so that the committee is not working in one direction, but the actions that are actually occurring are happening in a different way to try and keep everything on the same plane, same target, all of that. And I also did want to point out too that some of this, the items number 5 and 6, although there's no money allocated to that, there will be work being done on that, if you could describe that.
Sure. With respect to identifying financial incentives to promote historic preservation and promoting economic development through historic preservation, there are efforts already underway. In fact, the Historic Preservation Committee at its last month meeting began to evaluate a grant application that our Economic Development Coordinator has put together, Rafi Fastekjan, that would encourage and incentivize the rehabbing of historically significant properties within the community. This would be contained within the city's existing RDA. City Council did approve within the fiscal year 1920 budget $100,000 that would be utilized for this grant application. It is our hope that after the committee has a chance to look at the guidelines at their meeting on December 2nd, that we can bring it back before the city council at the first meeting, the only meeting in December, to get council approval of the grant guidelines so we can start offering it as an incentive to preserve historically significant properties within the community's RDA district.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to approve resolution number 7035.
I will move to approve resolution number 7035.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous then. Thank you, Mr. Mays. We'll move then to item number 9, the tentative, in all caps, capital improvement plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Keegan Littrell, your Public Works Director. First off, I wanted to point out that we have a new revised executive summary that you guys should all have.
Literally hot off the press.
Yeah, this one's still warm. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of numbers looked at recently, and there was a couple typos that was pointed out and that we caught. So we have a revised one. There should be more copies in the back for the public. Also, I have a brief PowerPoint presentation highlighting some of the direction, the changes that were given at the last workshop. Biggest one that comes to mind was removing the convention center. Then also want to give a special thanks to the finance department, more specifically Mr. Armentrout, for his assistance in putting a lot of these numbers together. So to the PowerPoint. As we've heard multiple times, our capital improvement program is a multi-year planning document used by the city to identify capital improvement projects. CIP funding is annually appropriated, coinciding with the city budget process, which we get to this spring. The capital projects are defined as new, replacement, or improvements of infrastructure, and they have to hit that minimum amount of $25,000. The plan includes, our plan that we've put together includes the introduction of the CIP program, the process, all the projects submitted, including the funding sources, the categories that come along with them. They're also presented in the different tabs. Let me back up a step. If you don't have all the information, you can get it at bcnv.org/CIP. Those are the tabs that I'll be referencing. All the information from the CIP plan is in there. But one of the tabs you'll see is presented by function, whether it be transportation, parks. And then it's also sorted out by responsible department, public works, parks, police, fire, etc. And then there's also individual project sheets that includes all the information we can fit on one sheet, the location of the project. Other than our utilities, we can't point out the location of that. It's got a narrative breaking down what the project is, the funding for the project, and also a recent addition to that is the O&M ongoing cost of those projects. You'll see that down at the bottom. Some of the funding sources I've mentioned before that we use: Regional Transportation Commission, RTC, Clark County Flood Control, Federal Aviation, the voter-approved capital projects. I'll get to those in a minute. Utilities, courts, residential, golf court, airport. Sustainable funding. General fund monies are from the unassigned fund balance, sometimes called the reserve. Sufficient funds in the fund balance for the 5-year CIP plan and still maintain the required 20% balance for our operating funds. Utility projects, we have adjusted those to the available funding that's available in our utility enterprise funds. These are the capital improvement dollars that were approved. We have item number 1. The voters approved $1 million for city facilities. Number two, $500,000 for utilities. That has a sunset of FY22. And then number three is the sales from track 349, 350 is still up in the air. So to highlight some of the differences that we made from the direction and information we got at the last meeting, there's no more unfunded projects that you'll see in the executive summary or in the tables. All the unfunded projects have been moved back to tab 8, I believe, or in the executive summary, it's in the rear of that. Those are all future projects, no longer unfunded. A lot of them don't have the funding right now, but they're far enough out that we push them out there. We also added a prioritization to these. Priority 1, meaning the funding's ready right now, the project's ready right now, we can move forward with it, all the way down to priority 4, meaning either there's no money for it, those are the future projects I was talking about, projects not ready. So there's an array, priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. A couple other changes. The master project table includes a new column. Last time when we were at the workshop, it appeared that some of the numbers weren't adding up. I tried explaining it, but by adding this new column of prior year funding, that explains why if a project says it costs $900,000, but we're only showing $100,000 each year, it's because there was $400,000 programmed before. So this new column of prior years, that shows what the total cost of the project was. Again, tables no longer show an unfunded column. Column has been repurposed to show monies for outlying years. A good example of this is RTC projects like the ADA program. RTC is giving us $100,000 a year for up to 10 years to do that project. So we'll show the future years for that. Some of the recent actions, as you all know, you were here. September 11th, we held our first CIP workshop with council. Then we held a citizen workshop on September 25th. As I mentioned before, there was only 5 citizens in attendance, but we had over 1,500 views on Facebook that had watched the video. So we did have a good viewing, and just wasn't here in person with us. And then we had our second council workshop on October 29th. I should say special meeting, that one wasn't a workshop. Now our next steps, if this is approved, the tentative approval will be incorporate the CIP plan in with our O&M budget. We'll move through that O&M process, looking for a final adoption of both the CIP and the O&M budget by the end of May, and then we need to submit it to the state by June 30th of 2020. And I want to remind everybody, if you need this information, you can download it from our website, bcnv.org/CIP. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Ever find out who goes first?
We'll start at your end.
Okay. So one of the questions that is brought up, and when you look at the numbers, one of the large expenditures is improvements to City Hall, which is $1.5 million. So can you explain that project? Will it cost that much? What we're looking at, and will that be looked at before any pennies are spent?
Right now, it's more of a placeholder. We know that we need some safety improvements, some access improvements. As we all know, the facility study we're eagerly awaiting the final plan so we can present that at a workshop to council. That's going to more outline exactly what is suggested we do. With your guys' feedback, we can generate projects from that. And no, we can't spend a single penny on any of it without coming to you guys for approval for either a contract or a bid. So we're not going to start spending money July 1st, 2020.
Okay. With that particular project, I also wanted to just mention that because this is a historic building, that it would also be considered by the Historic Preservation Committee if any changes are being done to it.
Yep.
One other project that is just is a concern, and comments made tonight make it even more of a concern, I guess, is what we're doing with grass through the Parks and Recs facilities. We've proposed grass in 3 different areas now, and I don't feel like we're ready to move forward with something. And now I'm even more concerned that we're potentially putting grass in an area that's leased to someone else without speaking with them. And so I'd really want to propose pulling that project of grass in the dog park until further discussions can be done. Both in what our end goal is. We can't put every dog in and send every dog to that park. It wouldn't be safe. There's too many dogs in town. So, what is the end goal with that? We have it as priority 1, but really, I think that dog park's been a long time there. I support them having improvements done to it, but we need to discuss how are the terms of that going to work with someone who's currently leasing it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that needs further discussion.
Councilwoman Bridges?
Basically, those were the items. First of all, I want to thank you for literally changing that executive summary since this morning.
It wasn't me. It was...
I know. Brock, thank you. Okay. And yeah, I do appreciate that because...
he did a great job on it.
Yeah, and it seemed like a lot of concerns that I was receiving were that the numbers... that people were looking at the executive summary and what they weren't seeing were numbers that add up, and now the numbers add up and they're consistent between the tabs and the document, the executive summary itself. I too had concerns about the dog park, and I didn't even think about it in terms of the relationship between a city idea, a city capital improvement, and land that's been leased to a not-for-profit. And how does that relationship work? And what about, it's one thing for the capital improvement to add grass, but then long-term maintenance. And it's understandable that if that's taken over by the city, what's going to be the net effect on contributions to the dog park? And I think that's important. And I also had concerns about City Hall. And that being something that's on the docket as a priority 1 without yet really knowing what those costs are going to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilman Adams?
Yeah, so I guess regarding the dog park, I think, certainly... I think, as was spoken during public comment, that, definitely interested in improvements in the area. And one that, again, I didn't even think of myself was, making sure that communication is there so that everybody is involved. I know Councilman Folda mentioned maybe pulling that item now until those conversations has been had. Whether we want to pull it now and then add it again later, or keep it there and then make changes since this is tentative, that's obviously for us to decide, whatever we think is the best route there. I think we have a great relationship with a lot of our nonprofits. I don't see any reason why we couldn't hopefully make this work, but certainly I think it just goes to show that, communication is absolutely key when it comes to this sort of stuff. So, that we don't have any of these any confusion here as to, are we wanting to take over the dog park potentially down in the long run? Will they be responsible for maintenance? Will we be responsible for maintenance? Do you have any comments as to some of the concerns that were brought up?
Yeah, well, back up step, you hit the nail right on the head about this being tentative. You can go either way with it for any of these projects. We can leave them in knowing that we can make changes in the future, or we can pull them out and make changes in the future if that's your desire. As for the dog park, we have no intention of trying to take it over from Seat Spot Run. it was initially proposed just to try to help them out. Yes, there is the ongoing maintenance cost. The estimate that was given to me from our landscaping supervisor is $11,000 a year for, and that includes water, mowing, everything. The conversations have not gone that far, as Sandra pointed. Is it Sandra? Yes. Sorry. As Sandra pointed out earlier, it was real brief. It sounds like just in passing that we would like to propose this, but yeah, I completely agree that we need to sit down and talk through all those details of maintenance and all the ongoing. The proposal here is to put all the improvements in landscaping. There's quite a bit of grading to do. There's actually some drainage improvements to the southeast that we would want to include in that project, the fencing. So the city was proposing to take care of all that up front.
Okay, and then again, whatever the council kind of sees fit is the best way to approach that, making sure that that communication is in there is good. I think keeping it in there so that we know that we can keeping our eye on the ball is important. That's the way I see it, but either way we have those options. A number of people have reached out to me personally about, concerns about not seeing any improvements included for the animal shelter. So, some of the things I asked about in during the briefing was, regarding where is it important for us to identify these resources during the CIP, and then what resources are important for identifying when we're talking about the operational budget. So, obviously there's a lot of concerns that, they do need a little bit of attention up there, and that maybe we're ignoring that. If you would be able to speak to that at all.
Yeah, in talking with the police chief, those needs haven't been ignored to this point. Everything's been below 25,000. We've been handling that through the O&M process. The police chief does see in the foreseeable future, but beyond this 5-year plan, of adding dog runs, which is going to be a small project that we're going to have to put holes in walls and relocate and more kennels. So that would go into the CIP. He's thinking maybe next year we'll see it out at year 4, year 5. But as of right now, the building's not in that bad a shape. So we can cover everything with that O&M cost. I know just this last year since I've been here, there were some issues with the dog food and the cat food out. Rats were getting into it. That was all handled through O&M. We had to replace insulation and roof tiles, and there was quite a bit of work the building maintenance staff took care of, and contracted work. So all through O&M though.
And again, this is tentative, so if we were to identify a real need, we still have that ability to add that in there.
Yep.
Okay. And then again, I think it was real important that when Councilman Folda mentioned, including the Historic Preservation Committee in discussion regarding this building, just as many discussions, because this is City Hall, it's the community's building, keeping it as open to the public in the process with whatever we're doing there is absolutely imperative. So,
yeah, there's a number of things that Mr. Mays and I keep in close contact on. If we propose something, he'll come to me, hey, I think this should go to the Historic Preservation Committee. We have no problem. And yeah, this building is definitely a big one.
And then my last thing is just, once again, a lot of these things, we're waiting on that Stantec study, and it makes it really hard here, trying to make decisions when we don't have this. So, really, even if we just had an update, on where we're at, it would be very helpful for us to make some of these decisions rather than, I know you want to wait for the whole thing, so we're not getting an incomplete picture here, but it could be very helpful just to have an update, and knowing what we're even potentially looking at would be helpful for us.
The plan that we received about 2 weeks ago was their final draft. We've been in the process of reviewing that, and we've seen a number of things that either we missed up front asking them about, or they missed when we asked about it. I'd feel really bad handing out that plan to council and the public at this point, and then us going back making changes. So I'd like to give you a full, complete document to review.
Understandable.
I did have one more thing, if that's okay.
Councilwoman Bridges?
Yeah, it was something I didn't bring up this morning because We had not yet passed resolution number 7033. The outcome of the Brown and Caldwell study, will the capital improvement plan reflect that for the following fiscal year? Or would it be added to the current fiscal year if there were things that they discovered in their research that suddenly became important?
If there's any real important issues that they come up with, we will ask for an amendment or try to include this next spring. We don't foresee anything. Mr. Porter's staff has a pretty good understanding of everything, all of the system that's in place. So they don't foresee anything that's going to be a glaring emergency. So we're planning on putting that in next year's CIP when we come back next fall.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm not going to start with Sea Spot Run.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the golf course.
Okay.
Both of them. There's a surcharge at both golf courses, so I guess that means that if you go to play a round of golf, you're going to get charged a little extra money.
It's my understanding that we have it at the Muni right now, and we're proposing it for Boulder Creek.
Okay, because it shows a Boulder Creek amount of $55,000, so that's imaginary money at this point?
That's going to be proposed before this is finally adopted. I believe it was, Brock can chime in if, I thought it was $1.40 a round. Is that close? It's pretty close to $1.40 a round is what's going to be proposed.
Okay, and the Muni course then currently has a surcharge?
Yeah, and I don't know what that amount is.
I have it right here.
Oh, perfect.
It's $70,000.
Oh, I meant the per round, sorry.
Oh, well, that's the total.
Perfect.
And we're doing bottom line stuff now,
Yep.
so if I was playing golf, I would want to know what it was.
Yep.
You know, my concern is when I look at these figures, and those surcharges, the golfers are being told that those surcharges will go into a fund and they will be spent on nothing else except improvements at the golf courses. When we look at the Muni course, so the surcharge fund is $70,000 and the project cost right now is $4.2 million for work at the golf course.
The total project, yeah, 4.2. For next year, 1.8, 1.9.
Okay, and if the surcharge goes on to Boulder Creek, would result in $55,000, and the total estimated out there right now is roughly $2.6 million.
Correct.
Okay. You know, I know a big cost shown for the Muni course is the irrigation system, but we don't have a valuation on if we spend $2.5 million out there, how much money are we going to save in water? So are we spending $2.5 million to save $5 million in water, or $2.5 million to save $20,000 in water? So that's a real concern when I see a number like that. It's been mentioned too, we're spending $350,000 to pull trees out of the ground. Do we know why these cottonwoods are getting removed? I recall something being said about root systems or water, or maybe don't like.
Damage to the course is what I'm being told.
So it's irrigation. Council, it's Julie Calloway. It is damage to the course, not only irrigation, but also to cart paths, pulling up the actual turf, and just overall damage because of the age of the trees.
So it's the root system then that's heaving up or getting into pipes or?
All of the above, that is correct.
Okay. Again, it's a lot of money to spend to kill trees. Clubhouse renovation at the Muni course, $700,000. You know, when I look at costs like this, and if we look at Boulder Creek, the dining room expansion and restroom, $400,000. Cart barn, $800,000. You know, for a lot of folks here in Boulder City, we thought we were done paying for all this stuff at the golf courses. And when we add all that stuff up, we're, you know, easily getting up to the $2 million range very quickly on some of those improvements. Is the city looking to get that money back? I mean, is it that there will be that many more rounds of golf that are played that would pay that money back? I know, you're on the spot. You're the public works guy.
I am. I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay. The other thing is my understanding of the agreement we have with the pro who runs both courses now is that we pay him, I think it's over $600,000 a year to essentially run the courses, and then we pay for the maintenance, and we get the income derived from the cart rentals and the green fees.
I'm being told that's correct.
Julie, Ms. Calloway, if you would like to.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Do you have any idea of what the total revenues are?
I do not off the top of my head. No, I do not.
Again, the reason I'm trying to drill into these numbers a little bit is if the golf courses are taking this much money, and we're paying somebody to run the course for us, and we're not getting a return on that, then I'm wondering why we're putting that money into these courses.
Much of these are infrastructure improvements, a lot of which have not been done since the course originally opened almost 19 years ago.
Yeah. And I know that Muni, at least most of the time, has been in the black, not so for Boulder Creek. It's kind of just barely made it into the black, sometimes not.
It's the other way around. The Muni course has had trouble breaking even, but Boulder Creek has made money.
Okay.
And with the new management, improvements are taking place, and the numbers are getting better. We meet every month to talk about it. One of the things I just wanted to add was the impact on operations and maintenance budget. We've added that section to the book, and when you look at priority category 1 for the irrigation system, we estimate that it will result in $140,000 a year savings on water. So those numbers are in there. Just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you. But when we look at these other numbers then, in other words, if we look at the revenue, say over the last 5 years from the golf courses, is there sufficient revenue to do these $400,000 expansions or remodels? And why are we doing that? What is the purpose? I mean, I understand the Muni course might be older. Boulder Creek, we're talking about expanding the dining room. So who gets the benefit out of expanding the dining room?
I mean, the city will benefit from it because residents that...
Okay, not ethereal kind of things. I mean, financially, who benefits from it? If the dining room is expanded and more diners are able to get there and more diners spend more money there, who gets that money? Because as I recall, the contract was that we get a percentage.
You get a percentage.
Okay, do we know what that percentage is?
I don't know off the top of my head.
See, that's, you know, to me, that's a problem. When we talk about this kind of money, you know, it's a great deal for somebody if a tax body will come along and say, you know what, we're going to build this facility for you, we're going to improve it, we're going to do all these things for you. We don't really know if we're making money off of it, and we'll pay you to run it, and we'll take all the risk. I'm just not sure that we want to get into that kind of business, or since we apparently are in that business to a large scale, you know, do we keep putting the money into it, or do we go to the leasee and say, you know, you're the one who's going to benefit from this. How about some of your money going into this possibility as well? Most businesses have to take a risk. Apparently, in this case, they don't. The people of Boulder City take the risk. So that's a real concern of mine, the improvements that are being proposed for the golf courses. On the new project list, the money for the Smith Building improvements were moved or changed, as I recall. They had been under the police department. Now they've been moved elsewhere.
You're talking about the ongoing projects?
Yes.
Yes. There was $250,000 for the Smith Building in there. Last I heard, it was being moved into the VERF fund because the police aren't able to move into the Smith Center. I can't remember. I took all these classes in college, seismic classes. I believe they're a class 1. They're a safety. And they have a higher standard.
Where citizens can go into buildings.
Yep, you can move my office over there and it's just fine, but fire and PD and an emergency room couldn't be in there.
Okay. And again, we get back to the fabled Stantec report on this, that we've got a lot of dollars that are sitting out there depending on these evaluations and not quite there yet on these. So that's an amount too. We may find, well, okay, the building's not suitable. We're not going to put improvements into it. I mean, that's a possibility if.
Correct.
Okay. I do appreciate the finance director giving an explanation of the amount that we can put towards capital improvement. It's capped by law at 10% of our budget. So it's 3.5 million. And then we get money from a couple of other sources that we can put towards capital improvements. But we seem to have a total that still exceeds all of that, all of those amounts. I also saw that you'd put an explanation in there that previously projects that were being financed by other agencies, the RTC is a good example of that, Flood Control District, that those monies were not included, so that we had a picture of just what the city was going to be doing, which would help us relate back to that 10% cap, or if we're putting $1 million out of solar lease money, we would know, well, that's where that money is going. But now we have these huge numbers because of projects like the Boulder City Parkway being mixed in with the other projects that we're doing. And it just makes it very difficult, I believe, to analyze what we have there.
Could I clarify something? The 10% is just what the general fund can contribute to the capital improvement. So utility projects are funded through the utility funds, and the RTC funded projects are important it's important for the city to capture all of the ongoing construction, because you'll see next month when we have the annual report presentation that the city's assets increased substantially, and a lot of that is due to the contributions funded by the RTC. But we still have to recognize that. So in full disclosure, we need to include all the funding sources in our capital.
But it would be possible to show, and again, I think the Parkway project is an example of the great majority of that project is being paid by the Regional Transportation Commission. But as I recall, the city is doing a little over $500,000 worth of work on utilities out there at the same time.
700,000, and then there's another 640,000 coming from NDOT.
Right, and there are other projects where we're going to have to put something up in order to get funds coming from these other agencies. I understand that. But where we mix those, rather than showing them in two columns, and I do see that you're making that effort, at least the bottom lines, you're subtracting those outside agency funds. So it's getting better. I want to compliment you on that, but it still makes it difficult the way it is right now to look at these and see, well, exactly where are we at in regard to how much money we take in each year.
Yeah.
Page 6 has all the funding by all the sources. So page 6 in the executive summary.
And unfortunately, I don't have that photographic memory that as I'm looking at a list of projects.
A lot
I
of
go, "Oh, yeah,
information.
yeah."
It's a lot of information.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of, especially zeros on there, but there's other numbers too mixed in there as well. Okay, I will then go to See Spot Run. Very disappointing to hear the folks say that they never heard from anybody, because I had suggested, I believe more than once, that that be done so that when people see that, okay, the city's going to do a project, they understand they're going to do it in cooperation with whatever they're trying to do. I think it's critical when we do that. I mean, I can't tell anybody on city staff, you're going to go do this. But I did make that suggestion that those folks get talked with, at least what preliminary plans were being discussed, and that apparently didn't occur. And so we get people going, well, gee, I don't know what's happening here. We're doing fundraisers. We're looking at some improvements. The fact that, you know, is this something where the city's going to take over that lease? I know that was never part of the discussion. The discussion was that whatever the city was going to do would be an enhancement to what See Spot Run has been doing for years out there. But this creates confusion when people don't get involved in the process. I'm disappointed in that. And I guess that's all the questions I have. I keep feeling better each time we do this about this, but I can tell you, without the Stantec report, without some of these other things being known, there's just an awful lot of money that I know, you know, it's going to say, well, you know, none of this will happen until you vote on a contract. Well, I've seen that where the contracts come and the ink's almost dry on them. Yeah, I just get a real bad feeling about doing a lot of these things. I really think we need to look at the golf courses and find out exactly what it is we're doing out there. If the leasee would like to contribute to some of that, I certainly think that could be part of the equation. But to keep going back to the residents of Boulder City on these golf courses all the time and saying, we're going to let these other things, these other projects not happen while we keep putting money into our golf courses, because this city has paid heavily for these golf courses. I mean, it has damaged this city in ways that we'll never know the lost opportunities that we had because of the construction of those golf courses. So I'm not comfortable with what's happening there. If the leasee out there sees opportunities, I would fully support, you know, doing something as long as they're taking the risk and not putting it on the taxpayers of Boulder City. Okay, anyone else have any questions?
I guess I'd just like to add a little bit onto the golf course discussion. I think, you know, to a certain extent, obviously, you know, it's a service that is provided, you know, the taxpayers and a lot of people here do enjoy their golfing. But when we do start talking about things like dining room expansions, that, you know, I mean, any other restaurant in town would love, you know, the city to pay for their dining room expansion. You know, I don't know who wouldn't, you know. So, you know, that does start to be a little bit of a concern for me because, you know, at one point, at a certain point we're providing a service, but then at another point, you know, we're paying for, you know, amenities for which the leasee to make a profit on. You know, obviously, it sounds like we do make a small percentage of that, but you know, I don't know that we really want to be going. You know, we don't want to be in the restaurant business. That's not what we do. So I do have a number of concerns with projects like that. You know, I understand that, you know, things like golf courses or pools and stuff like that, they might not always pay for themselves because it's about providing the service to the community. But, you know, once again, when we start talking about other things where it's not absolutely a necessity, of all the things that I've heard people, you know, I don't golf myself, but I've never heard anybody saying, you know what we really need down there? A few more seats in the restaurant. You know, I've never heard it. So that is a concern. I mean, if we were to be moving forward, I'm not sure where the rest of council feels about this right now. I would be in favor of maybe at least removing that item at this time. Once again, tentative and big caps for that dining room expansion. That would be, for me, that's the biggest one that stands out, that is just a little bit, that $400,000 for a dining room expansion, that's a lot of money. So I guess the real question is how we feel about moving forward with this as it is, potentially removing the something like that. I know Councilwoman Folda mentioned maybe removing the dog park thing in there right now. I personally would think it's good to keep it on there and hope that we can work something out and then remove it if something doesn't. But I'm just, I'm kind of trying to see where the rest of council is right now on this.
Councilman Adams?
Yes.
I'm sure you're already aware of this, but the 400,000 is programmed out for fiscal year 23, which is a couple years out. You're more than welcome to pull it, but it's not going to impact what's being tentatively approved, or being asked to be tentatively approved.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Well, I do think that goes back, though, to our special meeting that was held when the discussion was this a 1-year or a 5-year plan? And I believe the NRS says we have to submit a 5-year plan.
Correct.
So to say, well, it doesn't matter, or they're imaginary numbers, we're telling the state this is what we intend to do over the next 5 years. And I think we ought to have some accuracy when we do that. Yep. Any other questions or comments? So I guess you wanted to say, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you'd like to do.
I do have, I think I go back to that question that I asked at the last meeting. Okay, so what we're approving, would be tentatively approving, is just the items that are for fiscal year 21. When would we be looking at at the revision or changes into the 5-year plan?
I think as we go through the budget process, beginning in January, we'll be working on the operation and maintenance, but in connection with all that, when all these studies start materializing needs or good conditions, whatever those studies yield is when, and that could be in February, March, or April, maybe during the O&M discussions we say, and, based on the results of the rate study, we're looking at changing this in the CIP. So it can be in conjunction. I don't think there'll be one particular meeting. I think it'll probably be as conditions materialize that we have to address in the spring, we'll bring it to the council's attention as we find out about it.
Does the 5-year plan need to be filed annually?
Yes.
Okay, and when was the last 5-year plan filed?
Last summer, but in June.
So we don't file the one going forward for 2021?
This would be part of the package we submit in June of 20.
Okay. So this becomes part of that 5-year.
So every year, we revise it every year. So things that are in the current year one, we may decide we don't want it in the next 5-year plan. So, things change constantly in the document.
Councilman Adams?
To that point of things changing, how many times can we say Stantec report in here? Things will likely be changing on this CIP coming up. So, it's one thing, move forward on. Personally, I think we should move forward with this. Generally speaking, like I said, I would like to see maybe that item on the dining room expansion removed at this point. I think it's good to get the ball rolling so we can start, but obviously things are going to be coming back to us and changes are going to be made. I think I just don't see this moving forward exactly as is when we come to finally approving it. So I think it's, for me personally, I'm thinking, get the ball rolling on on this in general, with the understanding and knowledge that there's a lot of information that we're still waiting on before we, start making any final decisions, and knowing that, a lot of, hopefully not a lot, but, sizable amounts that could really change some numbers around that will be coming up in the future. So that's just where my mind is at.
And I'll read one of the whereases out of the resolution that's before us on this. Whereas this resolution adopts the tentative There's that word. Capital improvement plan in advance of the city's preparation of its operation and maintenance budget for fiscal year 2021 during the spring of 2020. So, why not? Okay. Again, if anybody would like to propose an amendment to this, this would be the time for doing so. Then if anyone would like to offer a motion.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as proposing an amendment to this, I would be interested in removing the dining room expansion for restroom, and restroom, I guess, is on there. So, do I need to ask for make a motion to make an amendment to this to remove that item?
Just the dining room expansion? Did you say something else?
The dining room. It says dining room expansion and restroom is the item on there. So.
Anyone care to second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luttrell. And again, I do want to make clear, it's almost a daily improvement now, but it is getting better. And I compliment staff on the work they're doing. I know Mr. Armentrout was scrambling today to get these things done, so compliments on what you're doing. Hopefully by June of next year, we'll be on target with everything. Okay, next item then is item number 10. This is Mr. Noyola for the resolution opposing the leases.
Honorable Mayor and Council, actually this came to staff requesting that this item come forward for council consideration. BLM was looking at potentially selling some land just north of Mesquite and the county just above Clark. My understanding is as of this morning, potentially that potential land sale may have been removed or stopped. However, the council may wish to continue to deliberate this item past the resolution should in the future that particular sale or any sale that may impact the water tables in or around Clark County may come forward, then that resolution may be able to be used.
Thank you. And you know, this resulted from a meeting of the mayors in Clark County. Mayor Lippman from Mesquite had brought this up as an issue. I had brought that back to Mr. Noyola, and he did a little additional research on it. I heard we received an email. I'm not sure exactly what that email was all about, but there are letters that have already been issued by the mayors of Henderson, the mayor of Henderson and the Clark County Commission chair. This was my way of preferring to handle this. You know, I can always send something out under my signature. My preference is that if we do something as a city, that we have the support of the council, a majority of the council at least, to do something like this. The information is in our packet on this, but I think regardless of what happened today, I think it's important for all of the communities in Clark County to make a statement about this type of thing, that if the federal government is going to do something, they need to take a good look at what they're doing before it might impact a community here, whether it's Mesquite or us or even some of the unincorporated places like Moapa or Laughlin or any of those. This type of thing could have long-range effects by basically killing the water supply for a community. So I believe this is necessary, regardless of what the federal government may have done today, that we make a statement about these types of things, that if a community has an objection to an action that they're taking, they need to listen to us. And I think we're best to stand together on that type of decision. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Adams?
I would just like to thank you for bringing this in front of the council, because I agree that it's certainly one thing for the mayor to send a letter out, but I think it is very important, as you said, that when you have the council behind it, I think it adds a lot of weight to it, and I think this is absolutely appropriate. I mean, Mesquite, they are our neighbors, and you know, I believe in issues like these, we do need to support them when there is a lot of pressure there from higher ups. You know, it's good to have our community's voice in there, every other community in there, making it a point. So perhaps today they said, we're not going to do it today, but you know, when it comes down the pipeline again, as so to say, that we have this there ready to go at the same time.
And just, I appreciate those comments, and I think that, you know, Mayor Lippman from Mesquite had said they had been talking to BLM about this for a very long time, and BLM went ahead with it. Where things seem to have changed was when these letters from the mayor and the chair of the county commission started appearing in their mailbox. So again, I think it is important that we do that. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one comment. I absolutely support this. I think it's Mesquite, their water comes from the groundwater, and so they are very much at risk of any pollution that could happen there. And I think that's very important to have safe drinking water, and I support this going forward.
Thank you. Well, I'll go ahead then and make the motion to approve Resolution 7037 then.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous. And we'll now have Mr. Luttrell return.
I'm back. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Keegan Luttrell, your Public Works Director. I'm here to give you the Public Works Annual Report. And I promise I'll be brief. Public Works is comprised of these 5 divisions: admin, engineering, streets, building maintenance, and landscape. And we also oversee a large majority of the capital improvement projects. For the admin division, as I said, CIP coordination and development with the help of finance. Greatly appreciate that. We also, since I've been here about a year, we facilitated bringing more work in-house. There was a lot of the work for construction management, inspections, facility maintenance. That's why I'll get into that in a minute. Streets and fleet. A lot of that was being outsourced. My past work has been doing most of the work in-house, and by doing that, you do save a lot of money and you have a lot more interest in the projects because it is your own staff that is putting their own blood, sweat, and tears into the project. So we've implemented that. Also under the admin is the municipal cemetery, where we've had sold 38 cemetery lots and had 47 intermittents. Our engineering division is in charge of the design and construction management for our projects. So far in the past 12 months, we've awarded them $23.5 million worth of projects or contracts and completed $10 million worth of work. We also administer the permitting, contract administration, inspections, capital projects, any work done in the right-of-way. As I previously said, the inspections were being outsourced. Back in March, we transitioned to doing it full-time in-house. Other than the BC Parkway, there was already a contract in place for construction management and inspection for that. But the inspections in the public right-of-way and other capital projects, we've done 328 inspections since March. I don't have a dollar amount that we've saved or avoided on that, but we are tracking it all. And then I'll be able to present that along with the other departments of what we've saved the city by bringing this work in-house. And then the engineering department also works with partner agencies, RTC, flood control, for funding for projects. Some of the projects we've recently done is the Parkway, our annual slurry program, reconstruction. We have an annual reconstruction program that will be coming forward. We just finished with a pavement evaluation, intersection design and analysis, and then a new one is ADA ramps that RTC is going to pay for. Our streets division I noticed when I got here that they're busy doing a lot of the street type work, sweeping the streets. They also help out down at the cemetery, repairing sidewalks. But they didn't have a whole lot of involvement with some of our RTC projects. They're now taking care of the pedestrian safety, which they've done some of it in the past, but they're more focused on that. Some of the reimbursable projects that we have a strong need for. We have our sidewalk hazard evaluation that RTC is going to pay for. So I'm putting more focus on them to be working on those projects. And in order to do that, we split the building maintenance and street supervisor. That was one person before. Now we've split that up into two separate supervisors so they can focus, since we are bringing more work in-house. And then also our streets division continue working on our flood control facilities. Our building maintenance division, we hired 3 new people for that division so we can bring more of the work in-house. We hired a plumber, HVAC technician, and another facility maintenance worker. They've done a number of projects since we've hired those 3 new people. A big one is helping out down at the pool, and just minor projects with, if there's an HVAC issue, normally we'd call a technician. They'd come from Las Vegas or locally, charge us a few $100s to either fix a thermostat, or like one day, I think it was in July or August, it was real hot downstairs, our server room was overheating, couldn't figure out what was going on. HVAC guy came over, some kids, we're assuming, had flipped the breakers right outside the building. That would have cost us a couple $100. Our guy came over and figured it out in 15 minutes. Again, we're tracking all of those costs to show you the savings or the avoidance on that. Our landscape division, they maintain over 230 acres of municipal grounds, 10 sports fields, 7 neighborhood parks, municipal cemetery, landscaped areas, and we're adding more with every project. They also are tasked with tree removal and replacement in our parks and various landscapes. You'll see, as you saw in the CIP, there's lots of irrigation plans. They're conducting water audits, trying to get to the numbers that you were asking for, Mayor, to show, is it benefiting by us replacing a whole system, or what we can do to save money and water. And then they also utilize a contract with the Nevada Division of Forestry. They're a great help, very cheap labor. They come in and they help us out with a lot of the tree trimming and cleanups in the random parks. And then just to list some of the capital projects that we have going on or coming up. As you all know, the Boulder City Parkway, we're going to bid out our crack and slurry seal program this week. Street reconstruction should follow up shortly after that. Our electric division is assisting with converting the street lights to LED. We're doing our demo for the bistro lighting. I don't know if anybody's seen our guys working out on Arizona, jackhammering, and they're going to start installing the bolts, and the poles should be going up hopefully in the very near future. Some of the electrical projects that our guys are working on, BC Tap, above grade construction has commenced. We had a little hiccup with WAPA. They're not able to come out until sometime in December, but our contractor is able to do some work before they're able to come out. And then we're going to try to get final proposals for the Buchanan overhead line, and then also the 69 kV loop transmission project is, you'll see work out there very soon. And we had a surveyor come out and started staking out the locations for the poles, but you'll see construction work happening in the very near future. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? We'll start at Mr. Adams' end this time.
So how's it feel after a year?
It feels like about 2 or 3 months. Yeah. It hasn't quite been a year, December 10th.
Okay. So we'll have an anniversary then.
Yeah.
with regards to the bistro lighting, I know it was something that I had asked before. It is in our historic downtown. Again, these aren't necessarily permanent. We can take them out and we can restore it to where it was if it's not quite what we think it needs to be. I do think we have to be very careful when we talk about making any type of sweeping changes to that area. There's also been just an incredible amount of work being done in that area. Obviously, there's a lot of construction going on. How long are we expecting to see construction, or not construction, but just public works in that area and downtown in general?
Well, there's between our crews and then contractors, I know there's a lot of work on Wyoming. There's a daycare center that's getting their facilities, and then our crews are working now at Nevada Way in Arizona. And then we anticipate Southwest Gas coming back in the near future.
Yeah, I saw them there on Wine Walk. I was surprised they got out of there before everybody started drinking.
Yeah. I don't have a real clear timeline. I know our crews are trying to get it in and out as quickly as possible for the bistro lighting, and you are correct. It's not permanent. We want to do a demo. If everybody, if everybody likes it, then we can proceed with expanding that project. But if it is not well received, the only thing you'll see is a newer shade of concrete where the pole was.
Because that's just probably in general, the most conversation I'm hearing from, at least businesses downtown is, hey, there's a lot of this stuff going on, and they're starting to kind of feel it a little bit, that maybe some people aren't wanting to walk by that area when there's all that construction going on. And
Wyoming was real bad. The gas company had to repair a line right close to Nevada on Wyoming, and I don't know for sure, but I think they hit a few snags because they were there a lot longer than we anticipated, and then that pushed back the Jack and the Beanstalk, the child care facility. So I know the contractors are getting in and out as quickly as possible, but it has been dragging on.
What do you foresee being the biggest challenges that you'll need to be accomplishing or tackling here in the next year?
Continue to implement the in-house. I believe staff is more on the engineering. I know they're fully capable, but they were used to let's hire a contractor to do the construction management or even the document control. Excuse me. That's just something that they were used to. I know most people don't like change, but it's been very well received, and the guys are doing a great job so far, and we just have a lot more work coming up, so it's going to ramp up.
All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Bridges?
Thank you. I seem to have been asked a lot of questions recently about the animal control building. And I know that that's part of the police department. However, the building maintenance, just basic maintenance, a number of people have said, how come that doesn't seem to be on a maintenance schedule, even basic, like the bathrooms and things like that. Is that part of your department? No, it's not.
Not the restrooms. Like I was saying during the CIP presentation, our staff went out there when we had the issue with the dog food. They did all that cleanup and replacing the ceiling tiles and the insulation and all that, but not the actual restrooms.
Who does the maintenance for that? Or is that her or the...
Do you do Parks and Rec do the maintenance out there?
No, nobody. From what I understand, nobody does?
I'm not aware of who would do that. Chief, do you know?
I believe the staff up there take care of it. I don't know if the custodians
Is that,
up there.
They're required to do all their own custodial services up there, and that
Falls under the kennel worker.
Falls under the kennel worker. Okay, I was just curious because when somebody asked me about something, and I like to be able to give them an answer. And that's it. And I think I also wanted to share that I've talked to some business owners along that stretch of Wyoming from the corner where Glenna has her store all the way down, and it seems to be going on for a very long time and impacting their business. So they can hurry up and...
We have an inspector assigned to the work that's there, and they're doing what they can to speed up the process. Unfortunately, it's not actually our work.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Folda?
I just want to say that I'd like that all the things that are being brought in-house, and not only that, but you're tracking the cost savings to that. And I think that's really important for people to see, you know, yes, we got more employees, but we're saving money by doing so. And so that's really important for that to be shown in a monetary amount, I think. Yep. So I thank you for that. I don't really have any other thing that's pretty clear, and good job.
I was very gracious that we were able to get so many new staff members in Public Works, and discussing with the city manager, it's the best way to show that you guys made the right decision is by showing you that we are saving money.
Thank you.
And I'll start with that because we did add an awful lot of employees. You know, there was concern from the community of, you know, all the people that were added. But I agree with Councilwoman Folda that, you know, I would prefer to see things done in-house if we have that possibility. One of the items that you had mentioned on here was construction management or project management. You know, I stopped taking the running total on Horrocks Engineering when they hit about $500,000. That's a lot of money to pay somebody to come out and go, yep, you're doing it right. You know, we're paying contractors to do their work correctly, and to then have to pay that kind of premium to have that work done. I think it's important we have people on staff that are able to go out, make sure the work is being done properly. If it's not, then, you know, have the contractor fix whatever they've not done according to the specs. I just see that as money being poured out, not getting much gain from. So that's one of those things. You know, you've mentioned the HVAC. Apparently there are some new regulations that are kicking in, so it was necessary to replace some of the units that use the older style coolant. That, I guess, is on target to be taken care of before that regulation becomes effective.
That starts January 1st, 2020 is when they're going to stop selling the R22 refrigerant. You can stop producing it, not stop selling it. They're still going to sell what they still have on the shelves, but I can just see the price going through the roof because there's going to be limited supply. So yeah, we do have an ongoing project in the CIP of getting rid of all the old units as we're picking out the older ones first and getting those replaced, because it's going to get really expensive if we still have to buy the R22.
Still working, okay. You know, kudos to our landscape division. We see our large parks have hundreds of thousands of feet go over them over a weekend, and you go there Monday morning and the freshly mown grass, it looks great. So they always do a great job keeping Clean Green Boulder City clean and green. Please get us those numbers as we get into the budget process on the savings that have been realized. And, you know, we'll move forward. We have a lot of projects out there, so I'm sure you'll be busy for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now we'll move to the Utilities Department Annual Report. Item number 12.
Item number 12, I tried to jump in front of Keegan to be consistent with my inability to follow the agenda. But he beat me up here, so. It's the Utility Services Almost Annual Report. Keegan started a few weeks after me, so. As everybody knows, just a quick overview, the utility departments underneath with my oversight include water, wastewater, electric utility, as well as waste management. They are not-for-profit utilities. We're not an NV Energy, so or Southwest Gas for that matter. These are kind of the strategic plan goals that relate back to how we manage the utility. Clearly, we want to achieve prudent financial stewardship, and we do that with the help of our finance department. Obviously, we have a lot of old infrastructure, as everybody knows and is aware of, and so we want to reinvest in that infrastructure moving forward. Clearly, we have to deal with not a whole lot, but very little, in fact, growth and development, but those are still, we want to make sure we have good standards in place as they construct and turn over infrastructure to us. And then, of course, promoting historic preservation and then public safety with regards to our environmental resources. Just some highlights from administrative-wise. Clearly, we got over a hurdle of creating the Utility Advisory Committee. They've been meeting regularly now, approximately 3 hours a meeting, so we're I don't know if they're working on wearing me out or I'm working on wearing them out, but we are making progress, mostly providing information at this point in time. Clearly, as we move forward with the rate study, there'll be more to come, and eventually more that will come to this city council. We also approved the rate study, as I mentioned, and so that's in progress as well. We'll start seeing preliminary information come out in December and then the forthcoming months through the spring with regards to the rate study. There's our little picture of our first UAC meeting, so I have to try to provide pictures. On the water utility side, we did quickly put together a raw water system hydraulic model that was primarily driven by analyzing if we could change the potable water at the muni course to raw water. That work has been completed, that can be done, and of course there's savings associated with providing raw versus potable for that golf course. The Boulder Creek golf course is already on raw water. We did approve the water and sewer condition assessment contract tonight. That will go a long way into developing the 10-year capital improvement program, as well as future asset management programs related to water as well as sewer. And then, most importantly for me, it's not most important, but one of the most important items is we did not violate any Safe Drinking Water Act water quality issues. So water utility directors don't like when that happens, but we did not have any of those. On the wastewater utility side, we are completing by the end of this year the wastewater treatment plant and lift station SCADA upgrades. SCADA, for those out there, stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. That is our system. It's basically kind of your brains that make everything work from a technology perspective. Water levels, it can manage water levels, it controls pressures, those types of things in the system. We are working on temporary upgrades to the headworks. There are some issues with it. There is a CIP project in there for $400,000. We've pushed that out with the intent of doing these temporary upgrades until we know better what we're going to do with the treatment plant in the future and what comes out of the condition assessment. I mentioned the sewer condition assessment, so there it is right there. As I've mentioned more than once, we are assessing effluent disposal options from the treatment plant. We've been working with the Water Authority to look at those options. They're assessing that. We've met with them a couple of times now, and there will be more information with regards to that coming forward in the future. So again, stay tuned for that. And then from a environmental perspective, we've had no National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit violations. What that means is our plant has been working well. We've met all the requirements of our discharge permit. Uh-oh, did I get ahead of myself? I sure did, somehow. There's the headworks for people who like pictures. Electric utility-wise, we've completed a few items, as Keegan mentioned earlier. The 69 kV loop is now in construction. That should be completed in the late spring. We've received proposals for the 69 kV BC tap to Buchanan project. We've done some pilot testing for electric system condition assessment using drone technology and thermal imaging, as well as visual imaging. What that really means is you don't have to climb every pole. Saves a significant amount of resources, and you can get a lot more done for a lot less money. And that's been successful so far. We've also agreed, the City Council approved the Salt Lake City Area Integrated Power Project. That is a number, it's a smaller number, it's between 5 to 7 megawatts of power that we get through the Bureau that adds to our Hoover A and B powers. So again, it's renewable energy sources that we receive. And then the WAPA Joint Planning Agreement is just how we work with WAPA with regards to our dealings with the Colorado River Commission and how we get power through WAPA facilities. There should be pictures there. Power poles are exciting, I know. And then last but not least, waste management highlights. We did calculate the landfill closure cost, which is a requirement of the health district. We did those in-house. Historically, it appears that we've used a consultant. That was a learning process for me personally, but we got it figured out and got that done and saved some money there. We also completed the landfill recycle center closure costs, and so those are what we have to do to meet the Southern Nevada Health District requirements. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. This time we'll start with Councilwoman Bridges, who hasn't been first yet.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for the report. Now, speaking of landfill recycle center, what can we recycle? What actually is getting recycled in the recycle center?
So that's becoming more of a challenge on a regular basis. So clearly cardboard is one of the easier ones to dispose of from a recycling perspective. There are still companies in the area that will take recycled tires. The difficulty is that a lot of the countries that used to take the United States recycled materials are not taking those like they used to. So it is becoming more of a difficult task to do that. That being said, the recycle center is pretty productive and pretty successful, but it's becoming more work for our operator to find places to dispose of.
So some of what we put in those green bins, does that end up in the landfill? Or is there a source for?
No, there's a source for most of it, but the cost of that is going up to dispose of it.
Okay.
I do see that as an issue, not necessarily this year or next year, but going into the future, it probably will be, unless that market in the country stabilizes and improves.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Councilman Adams?
All right, so I'll start with the easy ones. How does it feel after about your first year or so?
It feels fine. So I think my performance evaluation is coming up, so I'll let you know in like a month if that helps. Come see me in.
No, the point of the recycling is an issue that I hear about, but I guess I never did stop to think about how that affects us here in Boulder City. So that's good to know, kind of foresee those challenges. Like I asked Keegan, what do you think are among your biggest challenges? Obviously, the rate study is going to be a big one, where all the eyes are going to be on it. But overall, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that your department will be addressing, and how do you plan on addressing those?
The rate study, that's always difficult, right? Because you're talking about money coming out of people's pockets, but rates are also an evil necessity of operating and running a utility. Probably what I see is more of the programmatic improvements to the aging infrastructure so that we can continue to provide reliable services. I think that's probably the biggest item. Mm-hmm. And then the resources, obviously, to do that.
And then just with regards to the Utilities Advisory Committee, I have started to hear some concerns that, I know that the meetings are, sizable, they're going for 3 hours or so, but I have heard some concerns from some community members that they feel that maybe they're not, their input's not being asked of enough, that maybe that it's, we've got a lot of smart, really bright people on there, and there's a feeling that maybe they're kind of sitting and spinning a little bit, trying to, where they have all this stuff that they want to work on, but they feel like maybe they've not been bogged down, but just not moving at a pace that they maybe would like to see, or maybe some in the community. Do you have any, moving forward ways to kind of address that so that we know, because in the end, once this rate study comes and we get that, advice from the advisory committee, you know, that's going to be the big thing in making sure that everything's been on the up and up and that the community feels that things were properly, you know, discussed. Because in the end, when the information comes back, you know, we're going to be really relying on them, on your department, to really making a you know, an informed decision.
Sure, and with regards to that, it's not unusual, and certainly not in my history and experience with working with these types of committees, that a lot of the information early on is one way, from providing utility information, and that has been happening. That being said, I do see in the next 3 to 4 months, where especially as we move through the rate study and get through some of these studies on the infrastructure side, that they'll be looking at more detailed information both on the operating side as well as the finance side. And so I'm comfortable that they're going to get there. It does take a little bit of time, and remember, we didn't really get moving on the committee till the beginning of the fiscal year, so stay tuned for more, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Councilwoman Folda.
Keeping us on our toes. Okay, I just wanted to talk about the safe water. We haven't had any violations of safe water, but can you explain? It's my understanding that our water is treated in Henderson and then it travels to Boulder City, and then from there is held in a tank reserve and then goes from there to houses.
So actually our water is not treated in Henderson, but there is a water treatment plant in Henderson. It serves more of the valley.
Okay.
We get ours from the Alfred Merritt Smith water treatment plant, which is on the lakeside. So if you go down by Henderson? What's that?
Was that considered Clark County?
It's National Park Service.
Okay.
But both of those plants are very large plants. They serve the entire valley as well as Boulder City. So we get our water. It is ozonated, filtered, disinfected. Water in Lake Mead, contrary to what you might read sometimes, is actually pretty clean. It has bad connotations with taste and flavor sometimes because of the hardness. But the fact of the matter is the water that we even start with from a raw water perspective is really high quality before it even goes through the treatment process. So we get that water from Alfred Merritt, they treat it up, we store it in our reservoirs here, and that's how it gets to the customer.
At what point does Boulder City retest it when it gets to us and before it goes to residents, or how does that work?
So we actually have the water authority actually does the testing for us.
Okay.
As well as a lot of the member agencies.
Okay. And then, because it can always, depending on the aging pipes or where it's coming from and going to a house, what resources would a resident have if they had concerns about their drinking water once it travels actually into their home?
They would call the utility director,
okay,
most likely.
And
our water supervisor is knowledgeable on things that can be done within the house. Sometimes it has things to do with water softeners that are internal, that are downstream of the meter that we don't even manage, but we can provide feedback on that and how to manage that. But from an overall perspective, we look at the current requirements of our permitting that's basically Safe Drinking Water Act. Mm-hmm. We also have to look at future regulations as well as current regulations. Some of the concerns we've had were tied more to total trihalometane. Historically, when the Water Authority went to ozonation, that resolved some of that. It really has to do with aging and water sitting there. But we've been able to do some system improvements that have made us more comfortable with not being concerned about violating at least that parameter.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, Flint, Michigan was a problem because they stopped putting a chemical into their treatment process. I don't know how many lead pipes we would have here in service in Boulder City. From what I've been told, much of the original construction was using copper, which 70 years later is still in the ground. And then in the 70s, 80s, PVC came in. So I don't know how much lead is there, but is our water treated with whatever chemical is necessary to not have the lead leach out of a lead pipe?
So there are corrosion inhibitors that the Water Authority adds to the water as a treatment process that do prevent that lead from leaching. Frankly, I'm not aware that we have any. It's possible we do. A lot of that has to do with some timing of those lead materials being used and historically in certain time frames. And so as utilities went through and analyzed that, they tried to make those determinations. In my previous job, we didn't think we had some, but we did find some, very small amount. But fortunately, it doesn't appear we have a lot of lead in our system. So if citizens do have concern, they can certainly contact us and we can work with them. The Flint, Michigan issue was significant in that they changed their water source, which was a very different water quality, and that did lead to some significant leaching of lead in those fittings, in the services going to the houses.
Yeah, and I know I heard just recently, I believe it was New Jersey, that the plant that normally does it, the plant failed, or that particular part of the process failed. But even that failure for a short period of time was enough to get the bad water into those pipes. We get, I think it's once a year, a report in the utility mailer for the testing that SNWA does on our water quality. Do you know if that's something they test for?
They do. So we have to abide by what they call a lead and copper rule, which does require testing for lead and copper. And so those, we have sampling stations at various residences within the community, and we being us and the Water Authority, do those tests.
Okay.
Never had a problem so far that I'm aware of. So.
All right. With regard to the landfill, there is obviously a question about recycling. Is anybody buying it, or are we having to pay for people to take it? Another thing that I don't know that we've ever looked into is methane recovery.
So we don't, because of the fact that, one, we're so dry, we get very little leachate or anything else in the system. There's very minimal methane production that comes out of the landfill. We're actually doing that analysis as we speak as a requirement to the Southern Nevada Health District. We'll have more data on that, but even when we run, and I haven't seen the numbers, you asked a very fresh question, this is like yesterday. We run a model that projects, and when we use worst case assumptions, there's still not significant methane production in that landfill. Landfills are difficult when it comes to deciding if you want to do like a biogas recovery project. Just because, one, they don't have high levels of methane to be, as far as percentage, it's very dirty gas. And then as the landfill ages, the amount of methane falls off, and so it's hard to make the infrastructure work for a biogas recovery system. Very large landfills, City of Phoenix, those facilities are that big, that have that much material, maybe those are close to be making them work, but even they have a tough time figuring that out.
When those numbers come in, you may want to talk with our partners at Consolidated Edison, because they've indicated to me that that's something that they do elsewhere, not here, and whether it would be feasible for us to do it, but that is an area of their business that they do work in and might be able to give an evaluation on whatever testing results come out.
Yeah, we can certainly provide them those numbers and they can do their analysis.
Okay. With the utility rates and all of that, I know that there have been comparisons made. Well, we're still cheaper than Vegas. Yeah, that's not a very comforting thing to hear, that we're still cheaper than Vegas. We're a customer-owned utility. We're not a for-profit. We're not a private regulated utility. We're a citizen resident-owned utility. It's clear to me that over the years, we weren't doing what we were supposed to do here in Boulder City. Things got old and it was like, well, if it's still working, you know, just try not to look at it too often. We're at a point with many of these things that that's just not possible. And, you know, I won't say that we should invite outside looks, but nobody even looks at our utilities. You know, we own it, and if we destroy it or let it fail, that's our problem. You know, we don't have a regulatory agency that says you're deficient here, you're deficient there. They've just kind of left it up to us, and it doesn't appear we've done a good job over the years. That then puts us in a situation of, well, we need all this money. We have to do all these projects, and they have to be done right now. Tens of millions of dollars are being estimated for some of this work. My concern is that I know we have projects we must do, but there are a lot of other projects that I wonder, you know, maybe they don't even fit within our 5-year time frame. Maybe they're within a 10-year time frame, and that we haven't pushed rates up so high to cover some of these other projects that in year 5 we're going to go, hey, we're all done with these really expensive projects and look at all this money that's still pouring in. I would like to see us smooth things out where we can. Again, I know that some of these projects have been talked about for years as being absolutely critical, and yet nothing was ever done. So here we are with the critical mess on our hands. But I also want to make sure that we're not in a position where we're saying we've got to get the ratepayers to pay all this additional money, and then we find out, well, you know, after a few years things were taken care of, and now what are we going to do? Reduce rates? Or just find projects to do, or everybody gets a new truck, or?
I don't know if everybody would get a new truck, but with regards to that, part of the plan is to, when the rate consultant completes their rate model, we'll actually be able to do analysis with the capital improvement plan, and where we feel there's some projects that may have less risk, we can make decisions and see what happens to the revenue requirements, whether we bring some forward or push some out, how we manage pole replacement programs, some of those ongoing things, frankly, that we haven't been doing that we need to do, but we can plan those out, and so we can build that into that rate model and visibly, real time, see what those impacts are. So that hopefully would be part of our goal moving forward with regards to the work that's being done by the rate consultant.
Okay, because percentage-wise, we've already hiked rates considerably over the last 3 years. I know that they hadn't been raised since, I believe it was 2007, 7 or 9, prior to that. Well, that's fine, but, you know, let's not make everybody pay dearly for mistakes of the past if we don't have to. If we can smooth that out, then I think we should be looking to do that and not trying to push through every possible project immediately at this time. So that's, I believe, something that's very important. That's not only the electric, but water, wastewater, all of that is in that same boat. The other thing is, and as I say, I know things are getting better. The financing for the utility department has always, in my opinion, been opaque. And I don't mean difficult to understand, I mean impossible to understand. And we need to fix that. We need to show how much we're getting in, how much we're paying for projects, so that a person, a ratepayer, can pull that up and take a look at it and have an understanding of this is why I'm paying more. I know that work is being done on that, but we need to get there quickly. And I'm hoping that this rate study is going to help with that. I'm certainly hoping that the Utility Advisory Committee is going to be able to get the information that they need to make their recommendations to City Council. You know, this council sits as the board of the utility. we make the decision about rates. I'm not a mathematician. I can look at some figures, but they better be pretty clear by the time they get to me. And I think that's another thing that we need to understand is we don't have a Public Utilities Commission with, a dozen accountants on staff that can review all of these numbers. So we need to work very hard to make sure that that committee gets the information to be in a position to make recommendations to this city council before we start talking about raising rates again. It seems like the residents here have suffered enough for that, and we shouldn't keep going back to them and saying, we're still cheaper than Vegas. Because, by the way, Vegas had a rate reduction. Actually, I think they've had a couple of those recently. So we need to start looking at things like that as well. But I do think things are getting better. These studies, I know they take time, but when we don't have the information and we're being asked to make decisions,
It's hard to do.
yes.
Yep.
So again, same as I said earlier, that we're making progress. I appreciate the work that the staff is doing, and hopefully when we vote on that budget by next June, we're going to have a good idea of where we're at. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item number 13, which is the decision on whether to appoint for the vacancy on the council or hold a special election. Madam City Clerk, did you want to review the options on that?
Sure, Mayor, thank you. Due to the unfortunate passing of Councilmember Harhay, it leaves a vacancy on the council for a term that expires in June 2021. So somebody is needed to fill that seat. The council does have two options. They can choose to appoint a person to the seat, and if that method is chosen, the person must meet the same requirements as all of you who ran for election. They must be a Boulder City resident for a minimum of 2 years, and they also must be a qualified elector. So meaning they don't necessarily have to be registered to vote, but they have to be eligible to vote if they were registered, meaning U.S. citizen. If they were convicted of a felony, they'd have to have their rights restored, that type of thing. If the election method is chosen, that process usually takes about 45 days from start to finish. And the NRS does allow, if it is a special election or if it's during the normal election cycle, you can do an all-mail ballot election where you don't have to set up the voting machines. Everybody would just mail in a ballot. Also, with respect to, I forgot to mention in the appointment process, if that method is chosen, the appointment must be made within 30 days of the vacancy or after 3 regular or special meetings, whichever is the shorter period of time. Obviously, that would be 30 days. That really puts you in a time crunch because the vacancy occurred on October 22nd. The appointment would have to be made by November 21st, which is next Thursday. So we would definitely have to call a special meeting. And then with respect to also the appointment process, there were some comments made in public comment, as well as the last time this occurred in July, that although the charter doesn't require the council to have a formal process, there were many comments made with respect to that. For example, turning in perhaps some type of application or a resume or a letter expressing interest. You certainly can do that. I mean, that's well within your authority. And so if the appointment method is chosen, staff is requesting that you discuss that as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Councilwoman Bridges?
Oh, sure. I know where I'm leaning, but I have a couple of questions. Assuming we had an appointment, and the deadline is the 22nd of November, actually the 21st, which is next Thursday, and 2 of the members of council will not be in attendance next Thursday. How would that be handled?
We would fail to have a quorum at that point and would not be able to proceed with the meeting.
So we'd have to have it before, like on the,
There would have to be a quorum present, so.
right,
Well, you could call in. Are you talking about attending the conference?
yes.
You could call in. You are in attendance if you call in.
Okay.
And that's in NRS. So when do you leave for the conference?
Leave on the 19th. So it'd have to be either on the 18th or
Well, we have to post 3 days in advance of the meeting, and you cannot count the meeting in those 3 days. So that really limits you.
Okay. That was my question.
Councilwoman Folda?
This is really hard. The passing of Warren really saddens me deeply. He was my friend, and he gave me my first Boulder City gold pin for my efforts in Boulder City, he said. So this has weighed on my mind a lot. Unfortunately, this council has had to do this twice now in a short amount of time, like 4 months. And I think, I don't think any of us take this lightly. With all the correspondence, though, that I've received from the community, the majority have all been to a point. And in fact, I've only had one correspondence before this meeting saying, requesting for an election. And I think that was echoed again with the public comment tonight. And as someone, Warren always seek to do what the community desires. I think the community is desiring us to appoint, and I think that's what we should do in this instance. And I'm willing to call in or whatever it needs to take for us to have a quorum.
Councilman Adam?
Yeah, obviously I think this is, hard for all of us. I don't think anybody wanted to be here doing this. I think it is worth noting that at the time when we had the last vacancy, Councilman Harhay really did want to see an election. He thought that was the best way to move forward. So I think that at least needs to be considered, being that he was the one elected in. However, given the current circumstances with the costs, with the amount of time, either way, it's kind of a time crunch. The amount of time before the next election, I'm assuming people's names will have to be in, or people will be putting their names in, filing for the January of the following year. Is that correct?
Candidate filing usually is end of January, beginning of February in the odd year, so 2021.
So, we're about 13 months out, 14 months maybe, from that time before campaigning is going to be beginning. So I'm not opposed to either one, but I do think, like Councilwoman Folda said, the large majority of people that have reached out to me about it feel that appointment is appropriate given the circumstances. That being said, obviously there's no price on democracy, if you will, and having people's votes be heard. But that, either way, I think I would be happy, but I do feel that appointment is likely appropriate given the circumstances and the short amount of time that's available for the seat. With regards to formalities, as far as, I would strongly encourage anybody who is interested in the seat to provide a letter, a resume, however, whatever they best feel represents themselves, to at least provide it to the city clerk's office. I don't know if we need to have a formal form created that might, we have a limited amount of time, so I don't know if having any formal form created and then having to dispense that to have people sign it, I just don't think that that's reasonable at this time. But I would just encourage, just in the air of transparency, that was something that I heard from a number of residents, as to just to be as transparent about this as possible, last time when we moved for appointment, I met with everybody who reached out to me that I could get in contact. I think there were a couple people who did reach out to me that I wasn't unable to meet up with, but that was something that I did, was to go there, ask questions, to meet with them, to interview them, knowing to get a feel of how I felt they would represent the Boulder City. I'm planning on doing the same thing this time around if the council were to move to appointment. But I just wanted to get my thoughts on how I would approach it, so that the community has that sense of transparency there.
When asked if I had any questions, I would like to give an opinion. For me, it's very important that we not have an election. That's my concern, is because it's going to have a very low turnout. We're talking about an election during the holidays. We're going to be having an election between Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday. And it's an expense that would, for a position that's going to be approximately 18 months. However, for an appointment, it's a real time crunch. And I think, though, it's very important to have any people who are interested in the position to submit documents that can be on the public record. I know who has contacted me. I don't know who has contacted anyone else. I want to have equal access. To me, it's a real important part of this, because there's always that underlying theme that a lot of people seem to have, that there's not transparency in there, that somebody asked me recently, has this decision already been made? And I think it's really important to understand that this decision has not been made, that there's been no discussion, that people have certainly approached me and either suggested that they be appointed or that somebody that they know should be appointed. But that I have no preconceived notions. But I'm interested in really seeing who's interested, and have that come to us pretty quickly, because if I'm going to meet or talk to people, it's going to have to be before next Tuesday. So that's my 2 cents.
I would just indicate that, we have been through this before, when I was elected as mayor, and that left my seat vacant. In this case, this is a very different situation in that a member of the city council has passed away. I campaigned with Warren. We amused ourselves out in front of the credit union for 6 months. There was a lot to that. People did have a chance to come and speak with us, get our views on things. So I understand that. I understand what campaigning's about. I understand going door to door and getting people say no to you. That does happen from occasions. I don't think that fits in this particular situation, though. If we are going to do something, I think that the appointment process is there. There seems to be a real effort of some people, and I do believe it's a minority of people, to reconstruct the NRS, to say, well, you have to do it this way, and if you're not doing it that way, then there's something wrong with what you're doing. The NRS and the city charter are what spell out what we do in situations like this. It's clear. We followed that situation last time. I know there were people saying, well, how do we know the name that's on that was on that piece of paper? I have a picture of it if you'd like, because, I was getting ready to throw that away. I even asked the city clerk if we needed to retain that. And then it dawned on me, somebody's going to say the name wasn't on there. Somebody was going to say this all happened on a soundstage in Burbank and that none of this is actually real, because somebody always says something. But all we can go by is what the law tells us. And what the law tells us is we have two options. We can appoint someone. If we make that decision, the appointment must be made within 30 days. If we elect someone, actually there is no time frame for that. The city clerk has mentioned 45 days. That's the period of time that it would take the election department, the city clerk's office, everybody to get things ready. But we could say, you know what, we're not going to have a special election until next August. Or how about next December? Not this December, next December. There is no time limit on when that election would have to be held. This council has been down a position due to the other circumstances we've had now for some time. As others have pointed out, we only have 18 months left. The other thing that people like to talk about is, well, it's not transparent. What's not transparent? These meetings are open to the public. I'm certainly available. I make myself available if people have questions for me. But what's not in the law is, oh, you have to have all these people get questioned by the public. That's not in the law. It's not even in the law that people have to send in a notice to anybody. The law doesn't say anything about that. Now, I don't have an objection to doing that, but you know what? Some folks may not want to do that. And they're not required to do that. And some members of the public are saying, well, we want to see what all their qualifications are. I've filled out the paperwork for this. Guess what's on the filing application? Well, they don't ask me about my qualifications, I can tell you that. So I think it's important that the public understand too that let's not make this a situation that it's not intended to be. If you want all of those things, if you want this to be a major process, Glenn Levitt is the assemblyman from this district, and Dr. Joe Hardy is our state senator. Those are the people to go to and say, we want the NRS changed. Or you can do a citizens initiative and have our city charter changed. You're still going to be subject to what's in the NRS. But those are the other possibilities that you can do. We have two choices, and those are dictated to us by the law. Okay? Again, anyone else have any questions or comments? Councilman Adams?
Yeah, I just would like to echo that I think the last thing that Warren would want to see is his seat used as a political tool for anyone's individual purpose. So I think, like the mayor said, this is done by law, according to law, and, to try and inject, that there is this nefarious purpose that we are trying to get in here. I think it's wrong, and I don't think that it serves his memory very well, and that we're trying to use this as some political ploy to do any one thing. I mean, it's a tough decision, and it's one that we're going to have to make. But I think that, I just think that it's important that we remember that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion then that we appoint a person to the vacant seat on City Council with a decision to be made by November 21st.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous for this. Do you also want direction on when this meeting should be held? There aren't a lot of choices.
I don't think that's covered under the agenda title, so if I could meet with you after the meeting, because if we can wrap it up tonight, I could get it posted by tomorrow at 9. So if I could get your availability.
Well, we already know we have two individuals that are not going to be here, and again, I understand we don't want to get too far into the discussion because it's not part of the agenda item, but that further constrains what's available to us.
Right. Mm-hmm. So if I could just talk to you, to each of you after the meeting, please.
All right. So that takes care of that item for now. Again, the other decisions, if you are interested, you may want to talk to a council member, submit something to the city clerk. I imagine the city clerk, anything she receives, she will forward out to all the other council members.
And it would be included in any backup material that goes out in the packet.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to our last item for discussion anyway, the item number 14, appointment of a city council member as a delegate. Again, Madam City Clerk, would you like to provide an explanation on this?
Well, I guess, even though it was the city manager's item that I wrote. The National League of Cities Conference is coming up next week, and 2 of our council members have the ability to attend. And it's an opportunity to not only have some great educational sessions, but as a city, as a municipality, each city has the ability to appoint a delegate to vote on bylaws and items that the national, I'm going to keep mixing up with Nevada League of Cities, the National League of Cities sees going forward, goals and objectives. So we are looking for the council to select a delegate. Of course, both members of council can attend the annual business meeting, but for voting, you get 1 delegate to do so. So we're asking the council to appoint a delegate, please.
Actually, all members of council can attend the conference
Absolutely.
if they so wish. Okay, so you need a nomination and then a selection, is that correct? Anyone wishing to make a nomination then?
I would like to stand for it.
Okay, anyone else wishing to make a nomination? With that, we'll close nominations, and I believe the result's apparent.
Do we need to make a vote just to make it official or anything? Okay.
Okay, and that then brings us to our final public comment period. Mr. Sinayakan.
My name is Neil Sinaikin. I appreciate the urgency of getting this done by the 21st. I would appreciate being able to meet with all of you and being able to go further into my background and how I might be of benefit. I am very glad that you're on the council. I'm not happy with the shape of things. I don't feel that, Mr. McManus, that you should be doing all of the work that you're doing. We have a city manager. When George Forbes was here, he would have handled all of this and you would have gotten a complete package. I felt that you made a very good point, Mr. Adams, about the restaurant. You should have been presented with a lease. Who knows what's in the lease? Is the city required to make those improvements? Probably not, but it'd be nice to know. As far as the election, I didn't mean to place anybody on the defensive, and I hope you didn't misconstrue my remarks. I didn't say that this council has done anything wrong. I said that there's a perception that there is a chosen candidate by certain people and by the actions of the Boulder City Community Alliance. You've done nothing that does that. I've made the point, because of what happened at the last appointment, that the Boulder City press attacked this council on the appointment of Tracy Folda. That was wrong. They've taken every opportunity they can to attack this council so far. Any chance that Celia will Halley get, helping Mr. Morris or wherever, they're out to get you, in my opinion, and I don't want to see that happen. In terms of the policy, you're exactly right. You can proceed on the lines that you wish. I ask that if people submit resumes, and it's their option, and I feel I've submitted mine by other people recommending me and by what I've submitted so far, that's public record. The process of appointing Councilwoman Folda, I believe, may have been a violation of the open meeting law if there were documents or materials that you had that the public didn't have benefit of. So I just caution you, because I don't want it to be on the front page of the newspaper again. Linda Burnett sent me an email saying that I was the most qualified person, but as far as her friends are concerned, which may not be you, even though I was the most qualified person, they've already made a decision that they're going to back Judy Hoskins, which is certainly their right, and it doesn't affect you. I take umbrage that there is a political entity, almost like the Bull Moose Party, that is influencing Boulder City politics through a Facebook page and other media, where I don't think Boulder City should be run or that strongly influenced by the BCCA or the Democrats or the Whigs or the Tories or anybody. I think that it should be much more open and much more fair than that. So I understand if I've caused you to take any umbrage or defensiveness. I'm pointing out these things. I have an interest. My only interest is I see you under attack from staff. Mr. Morris should never have gone public with that OML. And I was here. I watched you people. I'm sitting right here because I can't hear anything. I saw Mr. Adams rightly wondering what to do. And I also saw Councilwoman Folda, and I understand how you made the decision you made. How can you go up against a city attorney who has this ability when you aren't attorneys? So that's why I feel the need for somebody that's able to see what Mr. Morris is doing on their feet and be able to interject comment rather than my being able to speak after everything is closed. I feel that's important. I felt that was important when Brock Armentrout blindsided you by not giving the appraisal. I felt that was important when there were all the mistakes made in Diane Petler's budget and we weren't able to really communicate. I have a background in finance, accounting, real estate, zoning, the planning commission, and who knows, in making pots and pans that I feel would be a benefit to this council. And I would really appreciate the opportunity to present that. The BCCA is certainly welcome to do whatever they want. And Linda Barnett is certainly welcome to feel that I should mind my own business. Well, guess what? I'm not going to do that. So again, if you have time, I'm available. I don't work. I'm retired. And I'd be glad to meet with you for 10 minutes over coffee or whatever you have. And I'm making a public request now, which is allowable, that any documents or any information that the council has from any candidate or any intermemo staff or anything at all, I'm requesting that I receive a copy of that right away. Anything that the council gets, I have access to, and it goes around the 5-day requirement, I believe, does it not? Anything they get, I don't have to wait 5 days to process. So anyway, again, I didn't mean to make you defensive. I took umbrage at that kind of an email. I don't appreciate Boulder City being under political rule by any kind of group. I'm independent, and I feel that it should be a very well open process, but you've certainly done nothing wrong. And if you had that impression or had any defensiveness, that would be in your bailiwick. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Lagan?
Jill Lagan, Boulder City Chamber. We are looking forward to many great events this month, and I would like to invite you and the community to follow the events. The Chamber Mixer on November 13th at 5:30 at Chili Jilly's on the patio. It's featuring home-based businesses in our community, and they want to look forward to sharing more information about what they have to offer. All mixers are free and open to the public, and refreshments will be served. The Pooch Parade on Saturday, November 16th from 11 to 3 p.m. at the Bicentennial Park in conjunction with the Boulder City Cruising Association's Fall Classic Car Show. We will have amazing raffle prizes, a food truck, live entertainment, marketplace vendors, as well as dog contests such as the funniest, dog owner duo, best of bling and theme, and the most obedient. Each contest is at a set time, and more information can be found at bcpoochparade.com. The Chamber office is taking pre-registrations for all dog entries and right up to the close of business on Friday. Proceeds are divided and donated to Emergency Aid of Boulder City as well as C-Spot Run. The Red Mountain Choir presents Strokes of Genius on November 15th and 16th at 7 p.m. and tickets are available at the Chamber. The Electric Vehicle and Clean Energy Informational Event on Monday, November 18th from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Elaine K. Smith Building. We will have electric vehicles there to view as well as test drives. We will also hear from several presenters regarding the vehicles and clean energy initiatives here in Nevada. This event is free and open to the public. If you would like to take a test drive, you will want to arrive around 4:30 p.m. so you can do so prior to the event's presentation starting at 5. All these events and more happening in Boulder City can be found on the city's master calendar at bouldercitychamber.com. And I'd also like to take a quick second to thank all of the city staff in the electric department, streets department, landscape department, fire and police, as well as the rec department, because many of these events that are put on city property couldn't be done without all of their help. They do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Ms. DeShane?
Oh, no, go ahead, Matt.
Sure.
Yeah, I can wait in.
Thank you.
I'm used to it.
Matt DeTeresa, Boulder City resident. I was kind of taken aback by Mr. Luttrell's comments about the phasing out of R22 refrigerant. I'm old enough to have been in the trade when R12 was phased out. And there was a big demand immediately for drop-in replacement refrigerants that were cheaper than R12. As he said, that the refrigerant went through the roof in price. But there's no reason to replace the R22 units unless they have a catastrophic failure like a compressor burnout or they're notorious leakers. I hope that the city is not considering replacing a ton of R22 units just because they have R22 in them. I'm sure that shortly, if not already, there will be replacement refrigerants that can be used instead of R22. If the unit is working fine, there's no reason to replace it just because they're phasing out that refrigerant. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. DeShane.
Judy DeShane. First off, I'd like to thank Diane and Keegan for the presentations they did answered a whole lot of my questions that I had earlier. So thank you both. I appreciate the in-depth answers you gave me. I also want to congratulate the electric department when they turned off the electric in the Girls Street a few days ago. It went off right at time and it was back on time. They did a great job, whatever it was they were doing. It was the water department. I'm sorry. It was the water people, but they did a great job. They said when they were going to turn it off and when it was going to be back, and that's exactly what they did. And one other thing is just on a light note, so nobody thinks they never make mistakes. I noticed what I would think is an open meeting law violation. The Park and Recs meeting, September 23rd, was not on the city website until October 21st. And so anybody can make a mistake. And I'm probably the only person in town that noticed it because I do try to get to all of those meetings. That's all. Just wanted to make sure everybody knows nobody gets by without making a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Ms. Finnegan?
Hi, Deb Finnegan here. How you doing? November 23rd, the Boulder City Elks is having an angel tree pancake breakfast, and it's wonderful. And this year they're doing some different things. If you bring an unwrapped gift, you can get in and eat all the bacon and pancakes you want. Or a Visa card for seniors. They're doing seniors, needy seniors or low-income seniors. Or, of course, a cash donation to Angel Tree. So just wanted to let you know that. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Fan?
My name is Glenn Fan. Good evening again. I'm be real light here. I want to thank all the people that came here and wore bow ties in honor of Mr. Harhay, and also the great things that were said about Mr. Harhay tonight. I don't have a bow tie. I've never owned a bow tie, and if I ever had got one, I wouldn't even know how to tie it. So that's why I didn't wear one. The only bow tie I have is an old bow tie that I found in an old refrigerator that belonged to my dad, and I'm guessing that bow tie is probably 50 to 60 years old, and it's made out of silk and it's deteriorating. And it looks pretty bad, so I couldn't even clip that on. But also, one other little thing, I'm sitting here looking at Councilman Adams and stuff like that, with his bright red bow tie, and I just keep looking at the picture of Mr. Harhay next to him. I keep thinking, well, that must be a younger version of Mr. Harhay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right. With that, we'll close public comment and go to city council reports. I think we're back to this end down here. Councilwoman Folda.
I have nothing to report.
Councilwoman Bridges.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun getting dressed up as a witch. I made it into the newspaper, But it was really wonderful. The trunk or treat was a gas. I've never done that before, and ended up at the last minute helping Jill judge the costume contests, and then showed up at the staff chili cook-off Halloween party, also dressed as a witch, and suddenly found myself judging chili. So I want to thank you for an opportunity to let me be of service. But to say, I think it's wonderful. Both events just showed really what Boulder City is about, and people having a good time, and I really was glad to be a part of that. Thank you.
Councilman Adams?
Yeah, I just wanted to take this time to speak a little bit about Warren Harhay. Warren was a friend of mine. I only got to know him over the last few years. And in fact, the first time I met him was at his meet and greet that he held during the 2017 campaign. It was the first one I attended when I was getting involved. I was really impressed. Bold ideas, very imaginative. It really resonated with me. And, we bonded pretty quickly over our love for the community, but especially our love for the arts. I myself a musician, him, as we would all come to learn, quite the writer. Warren wasn't just kind and gentle, he was a good person. And he really strived to do what he felt was best for the community. Certainly there were times where I disagreed maybe with some of his votes or some of his ideas, but I would reach out to him. I'd let him know how I felt about those, and he would get back to me. We would have healthy conversations about our different ideas of where the community's at, so the different needs, and whether we really changed each other's minds on any one thing, I can't say, but we certainly were able to understand a lot more of the different complexities of the issues that we face here in Boulder City. And he was never afraid of having the hard conversation. He never ran away from that, and he encouraged people, in fact, if they had issues, to bring them to him. And it was always that mantra that he had, that we can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think now more than ever, with the tension that we see, at the top level of our politics, all the way down to the local level, those words could not be any more important than they are today. I think it was mentioned, Warren liked to say that he was a retired electrical engineer with a little bit of spark left in him. And I like to think that with that spark, he left us a guiding light. And there are many paths with which Boulder City can take down. But I think having that light in our hands to help guide the way, there's really nothing that we can't accomplish. So I think that that's really important. So with that, I say goodbye to a good friend. Of course, he might not be here, but his memories will always be with us. And I think we all owe Warren a great amount of respect. With that, I've had a lot of people reached out saying, hey, what we really loved were those coffee with the councilman. I attended them quite a bit. I think one of the biggest things that people loved about him was not just talking about the issues with Warren, but also meeting other people in the community that had different issues and learning about different issues that other people in the community had and getting to know one another. So I'm hoping to create something regular. Perhaps it won't always be coffee. Maybe every now and again we'll do beer with the councilman. But I do work on the weekends pretty regularly as the entertainer that I am. But I'm hoping to find some regular times so that we can maybe bring that back for the community. So anyways, I just wanted to put those words in there.
Thank you. I'll end it on a little more positive note. Again, I had mentioned earlier that I'd gotten to know Warren for campaigning together. We were the two that were nominated by the Community Alliance. Warren was the type of individual that I'm sure would have believed none of us have ownership on the seats up here. We are also able to change our minds. We're able to use our own judgment. So I don't think Warren's going to have any problem with what we're doing here tonight. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.